Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a basic model in Rhino 8 and then take that model and make a rendering in Twinmotion and then do some post-processing in Photoshop. This is also like a three-part video. So if you just want to see maybe the Twinmotion side or just the post-processing side on Photoshop, you can fast forward. I have these all timestamped. So you don't have to watch the entire video if you don't want to. These renderings are more on the conceptual side, and I would say they're more appropriate for design studio, academic level, even competitions, maybe schematic design. So around that area or that scope of work. And AI is really coming in full force when it comes to rendering. So I'm pretty sure people can find prompts that can do these renderings for them. But this is for people who like to do renderings more from like a post-processing way. I would like to preface that I hate post-processing and I really like to limit as much post-processing as possible because it's just a time constraint. And if you're an architecture student or even a professional, you don't have that much time just to focus on rendering, right? You're not just like an arc viz person. You have a lot of other things to do. Even as a student, you have other courses to tend to. And as a professional, you have other things to worry about. So my post-processing is quite succinct or quite quick. I try to limit it as much as possible. Again, I don't like to post process too much. So if you're like a render nerd, you'll probably think that this is like elementary, which for some it might be, but I just want to preface that. And so these renderings are really more on the conceptual side. We're really trying to capture the mood, maybe the texture, the material, the context. It's not really about being like hyper realistic. Honestly, it's the opposite of being hyper realistic. It's more on conveying the concept and the narrative of the design rather than aiming for deep accuracy of material textures or reflections or like Fresnels and things like that. So again, I just need to always emphasize this is more on the conceptual side and really emphasizing the narrative and the mood of the design. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we are in Rhino, and before I start modeling, I just want to reiterate that you can fast forward to other parts of this video if you want to just see the Twinmotion side or just the post-processing side. I have this already timestamped, so you don't have to watch the entire video if you don't want to. So let's just go ahead and start building this model. So the first command I'm going to do is the box command. So I'll type in box, and I'll just click anywhere on this space right here. And then it's going to ask, if you look at the top left corner, it's asking for your length. So let's do like a length of 80 feet. And then it's asking for the width. I'll do a width of 40 feet. And for the height, I'll just give this height of like 20 feet. Perfect. And let me just copy this and then do the V for the vertical option. And I'll just go up here like this. And actually, I want to scale this. I want to make this like 30 feet tall. I want this to be a little bit taller. So let me do scale 1D and click here. And I'll just type in 30 feet. So now this is a 20-foot mass and a 30-foot mass, okay? And so let me just give these some layers. So let me just rename this layer. I'll call it top mass. This one, I'll call it bottom mass. So I'll just change this to bottom mass, this top mass. Okay, cool. And I want to give this like a gable, like a gable roof. So let me just do a line vertical and let me go up 20 feet like that. And let me just draw another line here like this. And I'm just going to mirror this. I can just go straight across like that. Let me take these two and I'm just going to extrude it out like that. Let me just join these for a second. And I'll do Boolean split. And let me just split this with this like that. And I can delete this. There you go. So now we have this gable like that. Very nice. And I want to create maybe like this reveal. I don't want the materials touching exactly. I kind of want like the shadow line in between here. So let me just go ahead and like pull this face down a little bit. So let me just isolate this. Also, I'm just going through like basic commands for people who are just learning Rhino. So that's why it might seem a little elementary. Let me move this down 1 inch. And by the way, you see my direction constraint, I always have it on normal because I always want to move perpendicular normal to the face. So I'll go down maybe 1 inch or maybe another inch, to be honest. And then let me do a dupe face border. And I'm going to offset in like 4 inches. I'm going to offset this guy and go in just like 4 inches like that, you see? And then I'm going to do extrude curve. I can also use the gumball, but I'm just doing different commands. Extrude curve, make sure things are solid. Yeah, and I'll go up 2 inches like that. Nice. So we have this right here. I'll also put this on bottom mass like that and delete this. Let me do unisolate. Nice. So now we have this, right? We have this little like shadow line right here. And these things are actually very important when you model or when you render because these lines and thicknesses help when you render things, even if it's conceptual and basic. Let me also just add like a really big ground plane. So I'll just do plane and make a really big ground plane. And I'm gonna go ahead and change the layer of this. I'm gonna go down here, make it on this layer here. Let me rename this to ground. Nice. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we're probably gonna add some windows. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and just explode these two. I'm gonna explode it like that. And yeah, I want these to be separate for now. Well, we're gonna rejoin these back again. But I'm gonna go ahead and add some windows here. So I think the first thing I'm gonna do is do rectangle. And I'm gonna do the vertical option actually up here, the vertical option. And I'm gonna start here and go across. So I'll go across like 20 feet and up 10 feet. And let me just go ahead and copy this over here. And let me do the same thing, copy this here. As you're modeling, and if you're modeling specifically for rendering, you should only add detail to what you're actually going to render. You know, don't waste too much time trying to render every detail or model every detail. Just model what you're actually going to see, you know? Okay, great. And then actually, let me go ahead and copy this. Be for real. Let me copy it up here as well. And let me do scale 1D. And I want to go up to here like that. So we have things like this. And then I'm just going to do split. Right. I should have selected, let me do split again. So I'll do split and I'm gonna, these are the objects I want to split. And then these are my cutting objects. It's hard to see the red on red, I apologize. There you go. Nice. So let me make a couple layers here. I want to make, let me rename this layer. I know for sure I'm gonna have like a grass layer. And let me make another layer. We call it window. And let me rename this layer. Call it frame. And then make another layer. We'll call it panel lines because I want to have like maybe this like a metal panel or some type of paneling here with division lines. And let's see. I don't know if we're gonna. Let me do. Name call it door frame maybe. And maybe because I know we have a grass border, I'll do grass border. Like that. I'll probably reorder these. Let me actually bring this like that. And let me change the color of this to like cyan maybe. So let me just click on these right here. And let me do window like that, you know? So the next thing I want to do is I actually want to do panel lines. So the top mass, I want it to be maybe like a metal facade. And the bottom mass, I want it to either be maybe brick or concrete. So I want like to be a contrastive material. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create like panel division lines for the top mass. I don't need it for the bottom. So I'll probably do contour or the divide command. Let's just do the contour command for this portion. Let's do contour. And I'm gonna select this and I'm gonna go just from here to here. And yeah, I'll do this as 4 feet is good like that. And let me just go ahead and group it. I have it active on the layer that I want it to contour. Okay, so that's important. You always want it to be active in the layer that you want to contour because it just saves you time switching layers. And I'm just gonna go ahead and mirror this. I'm just gonna mirror it like that over here. I actually want this to go over the glass. I'm being a little lazy, but I actually want it to go over the glass. It's just much easier for me. And I'll do the same thing here, but in this one, I actually want to divide it because I want there to be a panel that goes right down the middle instead of using an actual division of distance. So I'll just do dupe edge. Let me zoom in here. Yep, and I'm just gonna divide this by, let me see, this might, eight's a random number, but yeah, because this goes right down the middle. Yeah, eight's good. Because I think, yeah, because this is 20 feet and eight's almost equal to the divisions of this as well for spacing. So yeah, I'll just mark it like that. And by default, for the divide command, it'll group it for you. So these points, I can just take them and extrude them, right? So I can take these points and just go like that, you see? And I can trim these points too if I just do dupe edge, or I can split them, you know, it doesn't matter. I didn't need to dupe edge of this. I could have just trimmed it from the actual mass, but I just want to show different commands. So I can split, select objects to split. Let me go to wireframe. Right, I'm gonna split this. Let me just do this surface. There we go. So we have it like that. I'm kind of cheating here. I'm gonna make the frame for the window as well, but these are like the division lines. So I'm gonna make these really thin. In reality, what I would do is I'll probably extrude them and then offset them to make them more rectangular. But if I'm like in a hurry and in a rush, I just pipe them and I make it like a really small diameter. So I'll pipe it and I'll give it like a diameter of maybe, I can do 1 inch because they're more shadowy. I'll do like 0.5 inches like that. So you get something like this. So this will give you like nice, like dark lines of like panel divisions, you know? And then before I do it to the windows, let me just go ahead and join. That's why let me unlock the bottom mask. Let me go ahead and join this mask now, like that. Let me join it. And I'm gonna do offset surface, right? And I'm gonna F for flip the direction inward. And corner, I'm gonna do sharp, solid yes. And distance, we'll give like 2 feet. Like that. Okay. I think what it did is it chamfered the corners because I have some of these corners cut off. You see, like, yeah, some of these corners are cut off here, so that's why I can tell because everything's ghosted. You see how this kind of goes diagonally in? Honestly, that looks pretty cool. It wasn't a design intent, but this actually looks cool. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me lock everything. Let me lock the top mass. And actually, let me lock the bottom mass as well. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If I move this in, you see how it's going in? That wasn't intentional. And the reason why it's doing this, just so you know, is because this corner is completely knocked off. So that's why it's chamfering it. If you don't want that to happen, you could draw 2 rectangular curves at 2 feet. Let me just show it to you real fast so you understand. To avoid this, you can do like, you know, a rectangle like this, right? And then offset that rectangle 2 feet, right? And you can take these two together and extrude it up like that, and see it'll give you a thickness like that if you wanted to. And then you can go in and you can subtract from there. But I honestly actually don't mind this angling here. This actually looks pretty cool, so I'm just going to keep it. So I'm going to scale 1D. Make sure. Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I think this looks nice. And let me move this here. I could honestly just copy these same surfaces. I'm being silly right now. I would actually just copy these, but I think it's just my brain working in labor mode. Great. Okay. Nice. And you know, to be honest, I actually want to keep this glass almost flush because I do want this contrast of like thick mass and like light top, you know? I think that reads really well as just a design intent. Even though this is like random basic conceptual, I think this actually reads nicely like this. Okay, so I want to do the frames for this. Okay, so I'm going to show you the quick option and the responsible option. Okay, so the quick option is I can do, for example, dupe face border. Let me just make sure my frame is active for this one. And let me lock this. So I'm going to go ahead and contour this. I'm going to show you two methods, the quick way and then the responsible way. So the quick way, I'm just going to go ahead and contour this. And I'm going to contour this. Yeah, we'll do 3 feet like that. And I'm going to group it. And I'm going to change the layer. Let me see. Frame is actually the layer I want it to be on. So that's fine. And I'm going to pipe it. And I'm going to get like a diameter of 1 inch like that. Okay. And I'm going to do dupe face border again on this guy. Okay. So I get this curve here. And I'm going to pipe this with a diameter of like 2. Or, yeah, 2 inches is not bad. There you go. So you see you get this guy here. That's the quick way. If you zoom up close, honestly, even when you zoom up close, you won't tell. The responsible way is if you want to make it like rectangular, what I would do is I would contour, right? Like that. And then I'll take, I'm going to group these. And then I would take these curves and extrude them out how deep the actual window frame is. So maybe like 4 inches or 2, your choice. So you get something like this, extruded inward though. Let me just take these real fast. Like that, you know? And then I would offset these on both sides. Offset surface. I'll do B for both sides and maybe 1 inch thick frames because we're fancy. Like that, you know? This is the responsible way, you know? So if you want to be more accurate like that, that's the method of doing it like that. But I don't like these because you can have, for example, in real life, you can have glazed glass, you know, like silicone, as it's called structural silicone glazing, where you have it's like a very thin sight line. So you don't have to have these deep frames, you know, you can have these pushed back, you know? So it just depends how you want your rendering to read. But this is, I would say, quote unquote, the more responsible way of doing it. And like I can move this back maybe 1.5 inches. So I just want a little bit of it showing like that, you know? So it's really your choice. This is the very fast way, like, you know, more on the conceptual side, like how quick you want to bust out renderings, give it a little bit of realism in terms of depths and frames and things like that. So after that, I also want to do like a bigger frame. And I actually like this. Like I like how it chamfers in. This is actually nice. So I'm going to go ahead and loft this. So I have this locked. I'm going to see if the curve is still there. Yeah, the curve is there. So there, and I have this active on this layer, and I think the curve is still here for this one. Yeah, I'm going to loft this. So I'm going to do loft, and you see that's fine. This seam is fine. And I'm going to loft it like that and do okay. So we have it like this. And I want this to be like maybe like a nice wood accent. Because again, I'm gonna make this either like stone or brick or concrete. I'll see once we get to Twinmotion, I'll see. So I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna offset surface. Let me just flip it because I want it to go in and I'll do like 2 inches. There you go, like that. So there's like this nice accent, you know? Let me change this to like door frame or something. I gotta select this though. There you go. I'll change it. I'm gonna reorder my layers and change the colors, but you don't need to see me do that. And since all my openings are the same, I can just copy these. Again, this isn't the most accurate modeling, by the way. It's not that clean, but this is, again, as I said, this is more on the conceptual side, studio side, competition side to get the idea across. And let me just move this. That looks great. Yeah, nice. And then I can take the same one. I think I can maybe just duplicate it by holding Alt, -90, move. Move there, like this. Nice. Let me grab, I'll just do it again. Let me go ahead. Diameter. There you go. Move. There you go. So now we have this. It's looking nice. Honestly, the building portion is pretty much done. The only thing I have to do is like add some like door handles. I mean, here, I actually want to do the window frame here actually. And I intentionally actually want this to read as like a contrast of bottom versus top. I want the bottom to read as like thick, heavy, and the top to read as light, flush, seamless. So maybe the window here, I want this to all have like a nice light look to it, you know, whereas this has more of a heavy look to it. So when I pipe this, I'm going to pipe, I might pipe this diameter. I think 2 inches is still going to be fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. 2 inches is fine. All right, great. And then I'm going to go ahead and join these, except the roof. I don't want the roof to be joined. And that's obviously joined. Great. So next thing I want to do is the actual roof. So for the roof, I want there to be almost like this perimeter hidden gutter and like a separation from the top. So I'm going to do something called extract ISO curve. And I'm going to do both, direction both. And this gives me like, you see, it gives me like a curve, you know? It gives me like these like profile curves. So maybe I'll do something like this. Let's take a nice space like that. And then let me just go ahead and mirror this from the midpoint here. Like that. And then I'm going to do split. And I'm going to split this with this. Like that. So we have something, you see, let me join this though. I want this to be one piece. Let me join that like that. And then we have this like this. And you see, if you want to get rid of these, let me get rid of this. And these division lines can be annoying sometimes if they're already coplanar. And so you can also just reduce the geometric lines of your modeling as well. If you do merge coplanar face, right? I can merge this and this. You see how that becomes one? Merge that and that. So this becomes like this nice clean geometry, right? Like that. You see? And let me just push this down. I don't know. I'll push it down. So right now my gumball is oriented, I think, to object. You see? So like if you see down here gumball, it's oriented to object. If I do C plane, it means it's oriented to the world plane. So it'll go straight down. Well, this go straight down. So let's go down, I don't know, like -5 inches. Ooh. Yeah, there's still a glitch in Rhino where if I do the negative, it still goes in the opposite direction. We have to do it twice. It's kind of annoying. So you see, I want something that's like this, you know, that reads like that. And I want to give this a thickness. I'm going to just draw a line V for vertical and oops. And I'm going to do extrude surface along curve. I'm trying to just introduce a lot of different commands for people who are starting out, you know? So I'm going to do extrude surface along curve. And let me select this path curve like that. Nice. we have this. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, let me cap this. There you go. And then let me put this back on top mass. I should have made a roof layer, but it's no big deal to be honest for this one. That's nice. And I think that's good. I think that's enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and mirror this. So I'm gonna go ahead and mirror this like that. I don't need that anymore. We have something that looks like this. I can do Boolean union if I wanted to. There you go. So now this is just one mass. And I can also join this with this. That's one thing as well. The more joined geometry you have, the better it is when you're working with render programs, more so like on the Twinmotion side. It's easier. And you don't have to use Twinmotion, by the way. You can use other programs, but for me, I'm going to show you how to use Twinmotion. But yeah, I think it's nicer to have more joined and cleaner geometry because it's easier to apply materials to your geometry when you're in Twinmotion. So we have something like this, and let me just give this like a slight offset. I don't need this to be like super thick. So let's do offset surface. Let me flip it, and let me give it, I don't know, just like 2 inches or 3 inches. I just give one like a slight thickness, like that. That's all. Nothing crazy. Something like this. Great. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like reorder my layers, clean up my layers, and then the next thing we'll do on this model is we're going to do the landscaping portion, like the ground and the grass, and give it some ground features, right? And then after that, we'll switch over to Twinmotion. So I just modified my layers. I just reorganized them and I reassigned some colors to have better contrast with the geometries. One thing I also noticed is that I want to have just a slight like shadow line contrast with my window frames here, right? So like I'm going to just actually repipe this. I'm going to just do like, for example, dupe edge right here and dupe edge here, dupe edge here and dupe edge here. And honestly, it's not even that big of a deal that this isn't touching. I wouldn't even worry about that at this level. And press enter and I would pipe it with a diameter maybe like 1 inch. There you go. Because I want there to just be this slight contrast between frame and frame, because these things actually read when you're rendering. I think these small little things here is not that big of a deal. I can stretch it out if I wanted to, you know? It's not that big of a deal, but I can stretch it out just a little bit so that it touches. But I wouldn't worry too much about the the cleanliness at this scale. I mean, don't get me wrong, you want your models to be very clean when you're modeling in like a professional setting or for clients, especially if you're just a dedicated 3D modeler, but like for a student, or like for competition, like you just want to get the main big idea across. But yeah, so I want this to read just a little bit in contrast to the frame because I feel like it just helps with the reading. And I'll do this with everything else, but I just want you to do that. Another thing is that I'm looking back at this again, and I'm thinking about the views that I might want to take, like from here to here, and I feel like this reads a little bit too clumsy here. So I might just tighten this up a little bit here. You can do move face, but I still want to be like a slight shadow line like that, but I think this reads nicely like this. I think that's just nicer. In reality, your gutter would just be on the edge, but I mean, some people have it wrapped all the way around, but I think this is nicer like this. Yeah. And so the next thing I want to do is just add like door handles. So I'll just take this here, duplicate it by holding Alt. I'm just gonna eyeball this like that, and then just shift it over here like this, and I'll just scale it like that. You know, I might make it shorter or longer, but you get the idea. And then I'm gonna mirror like that. Nice. And I'll take this and then I'll mirror it again right here. Like that. Definitely like this. So it looks like doors, read like doors. And then I'll do the same thing here, but you don't need to see me do that. So now I want to start doing landscaping, okay? So I think any type of landscaping, even basic landscaping, is necessary. Like when you do renderings, like I think landscaping is so important. Just in terms of landscape design, landscape architecture, it's just a necessity when you actually have like a site context. And it helps for renderings. It obviously helps in design. Like it's something you definitely want to incorporate in your design if you're doing a design that has an actual context to it, not just like in interiors, you know? So landscaping is just a huge must. And having a contrast of ground planes between edges is also important, between like soft edges and hard edges. So that's why I have like things like grass and grass border and ground, because these are like three things that are contrasting each other. So let me just unlock these three for now, but let me just activate ground for now and let me lock everything else. So first thing, I want to do like a perimeter edge. So let me just go here and go here. Let me just like offset maybe 6 feet. So I have like this edge here, right? And then I know I'm going to have like this main pathway, right? From here to here, like that. And, I'm just going to make sure I'm tracking correctly. I don't know. I might just go something like this, maybe. And I know that this duplicates. Let me go like this. Let me rotate it 90 and move it like this here. I'm just zooming within. That's the nice thing about Rhino. You can zoom within the command. And then let me just go ahead and offset this more. I'm going to lock this surface because it's hard to read. I'm going to lock this. So let me just offset this 6 feet, this border perimeter like that. So there's like a pathway because I want this to be like a landscaping edge around here, And I'm going to just, I guess, draw a line from here and draw a line like that. And let's see. Let me go ahead and trim. I might fast forward through this if I feel like it's taking up too much time. Nice. So like I want there to be some like curvatures to this, like I want this to read maybe like that, this is arcing like this and maybe that arcs like this. And that goes in like this. And I want there to like I want this to be soft. Maybe there's like a pathway or something that takes you through so that I'm breaking this up. I just want this to read soft because this is such like a big mass, like it has hard edges and it's like a heavy mass on the bottom. So I want the landscaping, like the curves, to be nice and soft. You know, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with the flow and see what happens. Mm, let me draw a circle. I'm trying to see where I should put this circle. Maybe we do like a circle like this. And offset it out. Maybe, I don't know, 5 feet. Or do 6 feet to keep things offset 6 feet. Like that maybe. So like this pathway. Let me trim something like that. And then fill it. And actually don't want to trim because I just want to see how the arcs read. So let me do maybe fill it and we'll do like a radius of 20 feet and see. Yeah, see, I want to like be able to read the arc as I'm doing this. Let me go to wireframe because it's easier to read it. I'm able to read the arc when I'm doing these types of things. And then let me fill it again. Do radius 5 feet, maybe between like that. And then maybe another one 25 feet here and here. This. 10 feet. Ooh, that's too big. Maybe like 5 feet, like that. So basically, I'm trying to just soften these up, like this. Maybe this, yeah, this should be softened up like that. I might fast forward through this again, but I just want you to see the process, just the thinking process of doing this. I think this should be like a nice arc too. Fillet radius, maybe like 15 feet here, like that. You don't want it to look too lumpy either, but okay. I think I'm going to do more, but I just want to show you the process and the method before completing it out, So after like you decide the landscaping, what you do, I'll do something called curve Boolean. Okay. So if I go to, that's why I have everything locked, but if I go to my top view, right? So I'm going to do the curve Boolean command. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do curve Boolean and everything is locked. So I can just select what I want to select, right? All these curves and press enter. And combine regions, that's fine. We'll do yes. Output curves, yes. And I'm just gonna, and I don't want to delete input. So, because I want to keep the original curves just in case I want to come back. So I'm gonna select like inside of here, but I want to take this as well because I want the curve to be interior. That's why combine regions is on because it will just combine it as one thing. And then I want to get in here. And again, I'm gonna go back and probably add more, but I just want to show you the process, But yeah, once I have that set, I'll just press enter. And so you see now it gives me like one polyline curve. You see, same thing here. Right here, see that's one polyline curve, one polyline curve. So I go back to perspective view. And let me just go to shaded real fast. And so and now we can take this, for example, and take this, and we can make it the grass border, right? So I can do extrude curve. And I actually do not want it solid. I want it like this, right? And I want let's maybe think like, we can do like curb edge height, or I'm thinking more of this because this is maybe like an institutional building, like it's more bench height. People can like sit on the edge, more of like an urban context. So let me just go up maybe like 15 inches, right? And then let me do offset surface, or actually select these first and then do offset surface. And let me just flip the direction so it's inward. Maybe do like we can do 12 inches, 9 inches. We'll do 9 inches. There you go. So now you have like this nice, hard edge. But also, I want to split the ground. So let me unlock. I can also do, just so you understand, you can do unlock selected, right? And like you can select that. I can split this, right? Because I want this to be now like the landscaping portion. If I do split, right? I'm gonna split this. I think the curve is still there. Yeah, it's there. So if I do split, select objects to split like this, you see, I want this to be different than this. If I select this, I want this to be the grass, right? And let me do it again. Split. So like I'll just split. I think it's this curve there. Enter. But I want to do it. I would do it all at once. That's what I would do it all at once. You know. So this is very important. So you have like, in Twinmotion, we're gonna render this and we're gonna populate this and paint it with landscaping materials, and then in here we're going to have this as like hardscape, and this is going to be a contrasting element as well. Another thing I want to point out too is like I'm doing fillets, right? But you don't have to do fillets. We can also do like arcs, tangent arcs. If you want to like do like a nice tangency, for example. So I can do like arc and then T for tangent, and maybe like I want to do like an arc from here to here, right? And then press enter and like. So I just want you to understand that when you're doing these, you don't have to just do fillets. You can do specific arcs. But again, like I said, I'm gonna probably keep working on this, and I'll fast forward through this to show you the whole landscaping edge condition I'm doing. I'm only focusing on like these two elevations, so I really don't need to work that much on the backside at all. But I just don't want to model the whole thing because it gets very boring, and our attention spans are not that great anymore. So yeah, I'll probably fast forward through this and show you the final landscaping of this. Okay, like I said, I just wanted to fast forward and just do some extra landscaping edge elements. So, you saw me just do like these two pieces here, but I did the exact same method over here, right? Just I planned it out, drew it out, did tangents, did fillets, did the curve boolean command, split it with the ground, extruded the borders, and then offsetted them, you know? So the exact same thing that you saw me do earlier. I just added 1, 2, 3 more elements, you know? So this is all I need to take the Twinmotion. The context I'm gonna do in Twinmotion, obviously the materials and the lighting, that's all gonna be done in Twinmotion. So I'm going to transition over now to the Twinmotion portion of this video, and I'm gonna show you where to download it, and the plugin that you might need if you want to do like the Datasmith exporter, which is very helpful. And then I'll just start walking you through how to use this for Twinmotion, okay? And then after that, I'll do the post-processing. So I'm just going to transition over now to the Twinmotion aspect of this video. So we're going to start the Twinmotion side of this video. And the first thing you need is you need to get Twinmotion. And so for you to get Twinmotion, you go to the website, right? Twinmotion, and you can click on Get Twinmotion. And when you download it, you need to first download the launcher. And the launcher is the Unreal Engine launcher, okay? So once you install the launcher, you're going to install Twinmotion inside of the launcher, right? So this is the launcher. This is like the Unreal Engine launcher right here. And so you can just search in the store up here, type in Twinmotion. It's for free, you know, for people who make, I guess, like less than like $1 million in revenue or something like that. It's for free, basically. I mean, for sure for students. And I'm using an older version, but you want to download the latest version, which is 2025 right here. You can have multiple ones installed, or you can even uninstall these, you know, based on your preference. But I'm using an older version. Again, you want to install the latest version, which is 2025. Okay. So once you have that installed, so you're gonna have the launcher installed and then Twinmotion installed. The last thing you want to put in is the Datasmith exporter. That's so important because that's what links your Rhino to Twinmotion in a more seamless way. So if I go here, right, you can just type in Datasmith exporter, and you can once you download it, you restart Rhino, it'll just come up automatically in your Rhino's toolbar. And if you're done, you can just search for your Rhino toolbar. Okay, so that's it when it comes to installing Twinmotion. All right, so let me just go back to Rhino. Let me show you what it is. It's if you go here to Datasmith, right, this is where you want to install it. So you have a lot of things here, and I think the newer version is better. Again, I'm using an older version, and if you don't find it, you can just right click and try to find the toolbars in here, and it'll let you upload. If you go like to new toolbar or show toolbars, it'll allow you to find what else is not in here. Okay, so that's very important that you have the Datasmith exporter because it lets you to sync your model with Twinmotion. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is starting the file, right? So when you open Twinmotion, a good thing to do is just to synchronize, right? Just to synchronize, and it'll just start synchronizing. And then I'll go to actual Twinmotion, right? And when you open Twinmotion the first time, you can do new scene, right? Or you can just start the new scene that it gives you. So if you click on new scene, it'll start a new project for you, right? And I'm going to go over the user interface real fast, but you don't need, like, when I do new scenes, I don't need any of this stuff. I don't want anything here. You know, I don't want any of this. You can delete it here if you want to, but I don't want any of this stuff. I don't need any of it, right? I don't need any of this stuff. So the most important thing is to import your model, right? So you can click, once you click there, it'll allow you to link to your project. So if I go back down here and I go back to Rhino, if I do, you know, sync, right? And then if I go back to Twinmotion and I click here, it's gonna find the latest file, you see? Right there. I like to keep it by hierarchy, okay? Because I'm not putting any materials in my Rhino file. As a matter of fact, my Rhino file is very light. It's only 2 megabytes. It's not even a heavy file. I'm going to do all the materials in Twinmotion. And so what that means is I want to keep everything organized by layers and layer names. So that's why I want to do keep a hierarchy. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can do it by material, or you can collapse all of it as just like one list of items. But I like to keep hierarchy, okay? And then I just do import. And there you go. So now it's imported in here, you see? And everything is just one thing. If you see here, it has all of my materials here, you see? Or excuse me, my layers. Excuse me, my layers. My top mask, bottom mask, ground, grass, you know, and each of these I can select each element, you see? So it's very important that you understand this, how you import it, okay? Some people like to do it at the same time when they're modeling. They also have it in Twinmotion, but I like to model everything or the majority of things and then take it to Twinmotion, okay? So in Rhino, there's another one. You can do auto sync. Okay. If you have a simple model like this, auto sync is fine and it works fine. So like, it's going to automatically update your model between Twinmotion and Rhino. So like if I draw like a sphere, for example, it's going to draw a sphere in Twinmotion as well. But if you have like a very complex model, like maybe a parametric model has like lots of geometries, it might start to slow down things. So it's just a matter of preference. And you can toggle your autosync on and off. So right now you see autosync enabled. So that means like if I draw something on here, like let's say I draw a sphere or something, right? It's going to show up on Twinmotion. You see? So it's there. So and it's fast, it's rapid. Again, I recommend it only if you have a light model. Again, this Rhino model I have here is literally 2 MB, which is the nice thing when you work with things like that. So it's up to you. I'm gonna just turn that off just because I have like so many things recorded right now. Now, once you're in Twinmotion, you want to start adding materials and just start doing your model. But for beginners here, I want to just maybe quickly go over the user interface. I mean, Twinmotion is very gamified. It's like working in a game, right? So for example, WASD is to move forward, back, up, left, right, QE up and down, right, on your keyboard. And you can change the speed of movement by pressing the numbers. So like 1 is like very slow, right? And like 7 or 6 is like very fast. If you just press the numbers on your keyboard, you can change the speed of movement, right? So I like to be like in the 5 range. If you hold shift, you can go a little bit faster. So, and then, your mouse navigation, right click, you see how right click, I'm orbiting. And then mouse wheel, I'm panning. Scrolling mouse wheel, I'm zooming. And again, if I press numbers, I can zoom in. The zoom rate is going to change, you know? So that's basic navigation. And then this also has like its own gumball, which is very, very helpful. I love it. I use it a lot. See, now the speed is like too fast. It's like a little crazy, the speed. So, but the gumball is very helpful on here. So let me just give you an example. Like if I click on a geometry, you see it has its own gumball. And this gumball can change based off of your selection. So like this is the move gumball. Then you have like the rotate gumball and you have the scale gumball basically in Twinmotion. They don't call it gumball though, but it's very helpful. And so like once it's highlighted, like you can put in a number and it'll automatically do it for you. So if I put in like 2, you see it does it right away for you. I can do control Z to undo, right? Or you can hold it and like drag and click and scale things as well. Control Z to undo. And that applies for all of these modifiers here, okay? Now, so this is the import dialog, right? And so let's say you're not doing autosync. Let's say you want to do everything in Twinmotion. Maybe you need to make a slight adjustment. You need to go back into Rhino, you change it. So then what you would do is in Rhino, you would save the file, right? Because it's already synchronized. You would save the file and then you would go back into Twinmotion and you would refresh it and it would update it for you, okay? So that's just in Pointer Center for like file protocol and things like that. Now, here's like your library on this left side here, right? And again, this is like all of your layers for all of your geometries are over here. Ambience, very important. That's like all of your settings for like your lighting and stuff, but we'll get there. So, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to go into much detail because I'm going to walk you through this anyway. You'll see how I'm going to do this. And then down here is your materials, right? And then your brush, like you want to brush on things. And then media is like to capture views. And then exports like to export your final images. Okay, so I'm going to cover all these things. So I don't feel like explaining everything at once. I'll just go with the flow. So I want to just start adding materials on here, okay? So I'm not sure if you remember in the first part of the video, I said that I want to make like the top base like this metallic surface, and then the bottom base like this heavy mass, maybe like concrete or brick. So let's just go ahead and do that. So if I go to my materials tab, right? And we can do, let's go to metals. So we'll go to metals, right? I want this to be like some type of like copper. So because I don't know. I think copper is just cool. Um, Let me see. I think I saw copper up there, but let me see if there's any other coppers down here. Okay, I'm gonna use this copper right here, the hammered copper. And I can just drag it here like this. Now, when you apply materials, there's a lot of ways of applying materials. One way is you can literally drag it to an object. Like I can drag it to this object, right? But this drags it to everything, right? So if you see up here, it says there's a drop down. Once you click on a material, it gives you this option up here. So if I go here, I can replace material. So it'll replace all of the material. Or I can do apply to object, right? So I do this, you see this object, you see? That's one way of doing it, or two ways. The other way is apply by selection, right? So if I go, for example, top mass, I can do select children, right? And then I can do apply to selection, right? And I can put that onto the selection like that if I wanted to. But I don't want to do that, right? Because the roof, I want this to be a different material, okay? So just, I want you to understand the different types of methods of applying materials. So for this one, I'm just going to let me change this to object, apply to object. And I'm going to go right here like this. Okay. Now, for my material editor, right? So if I click on this, right? And if I click on this material, I get the material editor here, okay? And this is important. So you can change the color of this, which is very important. That's one method that I might do for this because I just don't like the color right now. Other is the UV, which is really important. I typically shuffle between world space and local space. This is going to change how it maps the material. Okay, so let me show you. So right now it's off. The UV is off. If I do world space, you see how now it's like very dense? You see that? And like I can change the scale of this if I wanted to. Like you see over here, I can make it bigger, smaller. You see? So that's important. And it changes the way that you apply the wrapping of the material when you change this local space, world space. Okay, so it's gonna change the scale of things. So you want to experiment with this and see what looks the nicest. I'm gonna see, because I'm gonna begin this from a distance. I think 3 is not bad, to be honest. Might do less than that, but I think 3 is not bad. So that's important. And I'm gonna go down here more, so more things. If I go to detail, I can even change the X and Y, like how many times this image is repeated, right? So, I mean, this looks a little too big. I might just go down a little more. Let me just do like, I don't know, 0.5. I don't want to do it for both. There you go. Something like this. Right? So you can change the X and Y and you can offset the patterning if you wanted to. Okay? Now, roughness is the clearness of the reflection, right? So the less rough it is, the more clear it's going to reflect. The more rough it is, the more matte it's going to be. There's a metallic feature, but that's different. So roughness is like how clear the image of the reflection is. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so if I bring it down, you see that? See how it's like very reflective? This is almost like mirror reflective here, right? Here it's like basically matte. You see that? So you want to play with this to see, what you like with, the amount of roughness. It's really up to you. I might change these. I just want to show you how I apply these things on here. Okay? Maybe 40, like that, because I want this to have like a slight sheen to it. And then metallic, I want this, yes, 100% metallic. I want to have like 100% metallic effect to this. If you bring it down, it'll be like less metallic. Let me show you. You see, it's just like matte. This will have more of like a metallic feature. And all these have like more options to it. There's way more options to it. So, but for the time being, if you're a beginner, don't even worry about that. Just work with what I'm showing you right now. Even the normals is important, but just work with what you have by the defaults, just by changing the texture, the mapping of the texture, the scale of the texture, the color of the texture. And I don't know, this color is kind of weird. A little too bright. Let me change this color. Let me like make it a little bit darker. I want it to be just a little bit darker, you know? Yeah, this is nice, like that. There you go. Don't forget, we're gonna change the lighting for this. Okay. Now, once you do that, I'm just gonna start adding materials onto here, right? So, like for example, concrete. So if I go back to, I can even search for materials. If I go to materials like library, right? I can search. I can do like concrete, right? And it'll give me like all the concretes in here. You see? You can search for things. But if I just go to materials, I think there's a concrete section. I want this to be like a textured concrete on the bottom. So let me go. Let me see. I like the textured ones, like almost the bush hammer ones. This, I like this one. This is cleaner. I'm gonna do sub concrete. Okay. So again, I'm just gonna put it right there like that. You see? Just apply it on. And again, I don't like the texture mapping on here. I don't like the texture mapping on here. I'm gonna go do world space. Let me see local space. I want the grain to be uniform. And then the scale, you may want to play with the scale a bit. See, there you go. You want the scale to read. I look clumsy. I like the 3. Not bad. That's nice. Basically it, right, for concrete. Let me do the glass. So if we go back to materials, we'll do glass. I might do reflective glass. And okay. I can apply it to objects as well, or I can go to glass. I go here, I think it's called a window. That I can do select children. And I can do apply to selection like that. There you go. There's glass like that. You see? And I can change this, right? So like I can change the opacity. Maybe I want it like a little bit more opaque. Fresnels, I mean, don't worry about too much with the Fresnels, but what's important is, let me see, this is fine. I don't want 100% opaque because then it's gonna be like super reflective. I want it a little bit less than 45. Like that, just to get some depth in there. And don't worry, we'll get to the lighting and things like that. Vegetation. I think everything else is fine here. Now the frames, like this wood frame here, because I want these to be like wood, right? So let me go back to material. Again, I'm just being very redundant here. Wood. I like things that are more muted for material. I like walnut or ash. Poplar is a little bit too. I like this ash. And so I want to get these guys here. Let me just zoom in on this. Let me just, my bad. Let me do apply to object. Go. Put this guy here. I should have done the selection, but I'm just showing you different ways of applying materials. You know? Okay, nice. Don't worry, the lighting is not good right now, so don't worry about the lighting. Lighting is not nice. So Let me see. If you click on here, I might want to. I don't know. I think I want to make the grain just a little bit more dense. It's not bad to be honest, because the scale looks nice. So let me make it. But let me change this. So let me go down to. Actually, you know what? This looks nice to be honest. Even I don't even care about the UV on this. UV doesn't even matter on this to be honest. Let me just see how it looks though. Ugh. No, we're gonna keep it on the default because it reads nicely as a rendering. Now, a good example of like doing applied material by selection are like remember the panel division lines, how we want this to look black. If I go here, these panel division lines, right? It's called panel lines. I think it's this panel lines. Select objects or select children, like that. I don't know where these went. I'm gonna refresh the model and bring it back later. But let me go to materials. I want something like black. I think, let me see metal. Let me see what we have here. Ah, carbon. This is good. That's nice. And so I'm gonna do apply to, oops. I think I already applied. Now apply to selection. Yeah, there you go. So it's hard to tell, but it got it. You see how it's black? Ooh, because I had to change my zoom speed. You see that's black right there. And let me just do this real fast. Let me go and do apply to object. Let me just, if I press escape, it will deselect it. But let me just put it right there. I know it's carbon fiber, but it's not that big of a deal. You're not going to be able to tell. I don't like this frame. I think it's a little too thick, in my opinion, for the nice like glazed glass, but it's okay. And same thing here. These are, I think, the window frames, I think. Yeah, there we go. So let me just do select children and do apply by selection. We click on carbon from there like that. Click outside of it, and there you go. You see? I got them there and there. Remember this was like the actual responsible way of doing the frames. The other one isn't. Okay. Now there is this like little break. Remember, there's like shadow break line here. That's very important. I want to apply it to this little guy. I'm going to zoom in on it right here. This thing right here. So I'm going to do apply by object. Let me see if it will get it right there. That's what I want. It's very important. That shadow line is very important. This is very important. The shadow line right there. That's super duper important. You see? And I want this to be also the concrete material. Let me go here, swept concrete. I think this is called, grass border, select children. Find a selection like that. I just don't like the scale of it. It's a little too dense. I would make it a little bit bigger, to be honest. Okay, very nice, very nice. Okay, so now what I want to do now is show you vegetation, how to add vegetation, okay? Because that's also very important, right? So if I go to material, library, it's just library, not material. I go to vegetation, trees. There's certain trees I like to use. For sure, I like to use Indian sandalwood, 100%. You can just drag it in there like that. And then I also like to use, there's an ash. Oh, there it is. European mountain ash is really nice. I mean, to be honest, this is like sacrilegious for landscape architects. Like you obviously want to use plants that are meaningful to the context, not just some like random tree that makes no sense in the context. But these are, I mean, these trees. We're not. This is not like in the middle of California. And let me put in like an oak. There we go. The dragon oak. I'm just putting these in a random place right now. And I think birch is a good one too. These are just basically all deciduous trees. Yeah, gray birch. Yes, these are nice and wispy. Okay, great. I'm gonna, so like, you can move things around, right? So if I like click on this guy, like, it's just like the gumball. I can move this over here, for example, take this one. Maybe move it right here, like that. Maybe rotate it a bit, you know. I want to get in the reflection of this glass, and then I can scale it right here. If I just drag this, you know, I can scale it all the way up when it's nice and big. That, go back to here, maybe rotate it a bit. I mean, it's literally blocking the building, which is silly. You don't want to do that. I also want to make it even taller. I'm going crazy with these trees, but there we go. This. Let me move this big boy over here. This is a massive dude. Let me move this one over here. Move this one here. These trees help a lot with texture and shadows, and obviously like in real life shading and stuff like that. But landscaping is just so important. It is so important. If I hold shift, that makes duplicates. You see, that makes duplicates. And then you say you want an instance or a copy. If you do an instance, it's always going to copy the same properties of the original. If you do copy, it's going to be a separate one. So if I do this like that, and then let me just hold shift again, maybe one right here. Do a copy. You know, you want to change the scale of things too. I might change the location of these, so don't take these. I'm just showing you, you know, how I work with things here, you know. Let me move this here, here. I just want to show you how to do like trees and vegetation and landscape. Now, when I want to paint, I like to paint my landscape, right? So for me to paint my landscape, what I typically like to do is I'll click on populate, and then I will drag things in here, right? So I'll give you an example. So I go to vegetation, grass and flowers. Let's say tall grass, right? I wanna drag it. Sorry, so I want to click on place, and then click on paint, and then I drag things in here. So like I want tall grass in here, this tall grass, maybe this tall grass. You know, why not some buttercups and some poppies and some, oh yes, violets and daisies. I think these will look fantastic. Definitely some, oh yes. All right, cool. And you can change the density of these things. Like, you know, here you don't have to have so much of this. You can have very little of this, and you can have a lot of that. And, you know, so you don't need to have too many of these things here, right? When you do this, you can change it individually, and you can select all of them at once, right? And you can paint it, and then you can change the diameter of this to really small, really big, you know, here. And you see how it's like this huge variety. It's like a huge variety of everything on here. You see? So I love doing this because this makes things like very lush, you know. Again, if I don't like the density of this, you see, I can reduce the density of these. You see? And so Twinmotion has these settings where when you're more zoomed out, it's going to delete the preview image of your landscaping. But the more you zoom in, it'll come back. So don't worry about that. Okay. And also, these settings for the reflection isn't even the best. Like I have this in like mediocre settings, and I'll show you what to do with the actual settings of the actual lighting and the reflection and the render settings. So don't worry about that. I'm just trying to cover all of the major necessities, you know? So yeah, I would typically go in here and I would start painting with this. And you can like isolate this. So for example, if I go here, right, I think I have a grass. Let me just click on this surface. You see the grass one? If I do select children, and I don't always have to select children, but it's just my habit. And then if I do isolate on and off, you see, I can go ahead and I can start to paint things, you know, with it if I wanted to. But what I should have done, to be honest, is I should have selected the painted vegetation as well and done it with it, but it's not that big of a deal. like this, and I can start to paint on here if I wanted to. If I do paint, right, I can maybe make this maybe a little bit bigger, I guess, here, and start to paint on here. Oh, let me just preview. There you go. You know, like that, paint in here, you know? And again, like if I go out of this, maybe this is like a little bit too much. I can erase it, you know, I can erase if it like gets out of the border here. I can change the diameter of this to erase things that are a little bit too much going outside of the border, you know? So I can erase things as well. So I just want you to see the settings here. I can erase this. So I just want to show you that you can isolate things and put them on and off. And so if I go back I can go back onto the layer. Let me just press escape. Click here. Let me go to grass. I can do isolate on off and it'll come back. You see? And so I would say that two more materials I want to add is the ground material, and then I want to add the roof material. So let me just do the roof material real fast, and then I want to show you the lighting, and then I'm probably going to fast forward through in here because I want to add or just adjust the landscaping and stuff and show people. But let me go back to library. Let me go to materials. Let me go back to metals, and let me do. I want something that looks like corrugated roof. I think like aluminum siding isn't that bad, to be honest. I don't know which one though. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. I like that this is really thin. So let me put this in here. Aluminum siding. And I want to change the color of this guy because I want it to almost mimic the copper. Let me see the color. Let me see what we can do here. Let me. Okay. 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 So let me go down 110. Let me make this 75 or 74, 71. Oh man, that looks crazy, but let's see. And I'm going to put it on this guy up here, but let me just make sure it's by object. Like that. Nice. You see, the color looks purple, but like because it's on the roof, it's gonna have a different reflectivity. So that's important to understand. And so I don't like the scale of it though. The scale is a little too much. It's so if I go down here, let me first change the UV of this. There you go. I just don't like the direction it's going in. I want it to go 90. Let me just type it in. I'm just lazy. No, don't randomize UV. One at 90. Yeah, it looks nice. But then this it's just too tiny. I want to increase the scale. Yeah, that's nice. Now I can like read. I mean, don't worry so much about this. Oh, I want to make this. I want to make this gutter like a black as well. That's important. Put that right there. There you go. Nice. See, these things matter. These even this little shadow line. You see, because it looks like a shadow. That thing matters. You know. Let me go ahead and now show you the lighting and the adding entourage and stuff like that because that's important as well. So for lighting, this is so important. This is very important. It's called ambience up here. This is how you control your lighting, okay? So on your ambience, you have these categories: your environment, your camera, your render style, and your effects. I think what I'm gonna do right away, I'm gonna do my render and do lumen. Okay, I want to do a lumen method. That's very important. And under lumen method, it's gonna be we're gonna do a real time, and it's gonna be lumen method, not standard. Very important, okay? The reflections that you currently see on the glass is not the final output. Final output is going to be way better and more high quality. Okay. There is something called path tracer. These are for render nerds, and this is for people who are like dedicated to allowing their rendering to run for a while. Okay. A lot of us don't have the luxury of that. Path tracer does produce beautiful results. It just takes more time, and you need like a high performance machine if you want to do like a nice path tracer, you know? So that's very important to understand. I don't do that because especially if you're like an architecture student, you just don't have time, right? So you're just trying to whip out renderings that look, good. And if we're gonna do post processing, I wouldn't really so much like hyper realism. Again, like I said in the beginning of the video, we're not aiming for hyper realism. These are conceptual, textured, moody, co- maybe conveying the mood of the scene and the narrative, right? That's what we're aiming for here, all right? Not like hyper realism. So I really like the Lumen method. It's a really good in between. I always bump up my scene detail, and then my quality is like I have really great quality for my reflectivities. I go crazy with these guys. Shadow bias is just going to show you how much you want to include the shadows from a certain distance. So you can keep it as default, but that's the one thing I changed right away, so that I just remember that. Okay. Now going back to environment, it's you just changing the time of day. You see, when I change the time of day, it's going to start changing the color of things. So and I'll go more into detail about how I capture my shadows and stuff like that. But I always like to have some type of cast shadow either on the ground or on the structure of the design itself because it provides you with a good level of depth. Okay. And then this is like the weather conditions, like the clouds and stuff. I like to be kind of in between, like right there. Okay. And I the fog is very actually interesting because we're gonna do more of like a textured style rendering. I like to have the fog sometimes at 15, sometimes like super clear day, but I like to have it at like 15, like 15, 20. Sometimes it'll be more extreme because it adds like this textured effect depending on the angle of your sun. Okay, you can like make things rain over here. Like this can be rainy, moody, but we'll go here. Again, I'm gonna fast forward and populate everything with landscaping and stuff like that just to see what I'm doing. And then you'll see this will change the view right away. But this is nice. I like this. I like how the material's rating. And let me go down here. I mean, you can change the offset here if you wanted to. You see? There you go. I'm just gonna do this. You should not touch this to be honest. Unless you want to just fool around with the lighting. I would keep everything as default and make sure your building is in true north. I think my building's like rotated like a weird angle from true north, but you want to make sure your building's like actually oriented true north or whatever before you play around with the actual north here. So I'm gonna do this though for now because I know for a fact this is not oriented correctly. But you see right away how when you have things oriented properly with this correct sunlighting, it does start to change the effect. So that's on the location setting. And you can import you can actually import settings here. Like you can import actual location settings of sunlight and stuff like that based on the environment. And there's a lot more settings, weather condition, wind speed. Like honestly, I don't really want any vegetation growth doesn't matter. Precipitation, that's again if you're gonna have rain in here, rain renderings. The seasons are important though. This is actually very cool. So like here, you see, you can go through seasons. Like I'm in summer, I can go to fall. It'll change the seasons of this. You see, winter time. You know, so seasons are really cool. And let me just go up here. Let me see this. Just see what lighting we're getting here. There you go. You see how now we're really starting to see the material quality, right? That's what I'm looking. We're moving for this like material quality right here. Let me see what else. I'm liking this. This is not bad. Again, I like having some type of shadow on here because it gives some depth. And I'll go into more detail about this. So camera, I like to bump up my exposure a little bit, just not too much, but I mean, this is actually not bad to be honest, even though it's a little blown out. I actually like to bump it up a little bit more sometimes. Like between 1 and like 1.5, 1.6, depending on the views. Okay. This is nice. It's getting there. And also, what I also like to do is when it comes to elevation shots, and this is going to matter a lot if you want to do like this, like kind of like textured collagey look rendering style. Those views look best on like elevation shots. You can also do perspective, but like perspective elevation shots look the best in those types. So if I go down to my lens, right, and if I go to details, I can do so I can do parallelism. You see how now it's like flat straight on, but also I can align my camera to whatever geometry. And now it's perfectly flat aligned to this geometry. So now you're like perspective elevation right now when you do align camera. And we can do depth of field if you want to, but that's only if you're like super close up to things where you actually have like a nice foreground versus background, right? So like this is like, or things like this are like great depth of field, you know? This is a nice shot, to be honest. That's a nice shot, you know? Like a nice like material detail. You see you capture the detail of the material here. Okay. So those are very important. And then effects, that's it. I mean, this you can do in Photoshop with the contrast. I actually like to leave this in Photoshop, to be honest. I don't like to do it here. I like to leave in Photoshop the contrast because you know once it's there, you can't go back to it. So I like to leave them as is. But those are the major settings. And like, let's say I wanted to save actually like this view because I like this view, right? I can go to media and I click the plus sign. So now that view is saved. You see? So if I like zoom out and I click on this, it takes me right to it, okay? And let's say I wanted to update it, right? So like there's this little refresh icon here. Let's say I like the lighting to be different. Like let's say I like the lighting more like this, or I want it more like ooh, like yeah, like that, where it's like kind of I get the reflection of the sun here, right? I don't update it like that then. You see? Actually, the concrete looks gross here. Like I would make the concrete more textured, probably increase the scale of the concrete. You see the sun here? If you don't like the sun, you can change the size of your sun. So if I go down, if I go to details here, you see the sun size? I can change it. So you see now it's like more blurred out, or it's like massive, you know? So it's really up to you if you don't like how the sun's appearing in your environment. This is actually really nice, but the concrete, I'm not a fan of how the concrete's looking, to be honest. The concrete's looking, I don't know if it's, maybe it's the size. It might be the size, like the scale of the actual concrete is just not looking nice. Let me just exaggerate it. That's massive. So that I'm trying to see more of the texture of the concrete there. Yeah. But you see, this copper looks really great. This looks nice. Now, the other things I want to show you are adding entourage and adding building context on here. That's important. So for entourage, if I go to library and I go to characters, right? You can do animated humans, you can do group, and you can also paint people. Like if I go to populate, I can paint people like all over if I wanted to. So it's your choice. But I don't do animated humans. I typically like to do groups if it's like an urban context. I like to do groups and I like to just drag them on here, rotate like that. I just like to add groups around the context like that. To be honest, I don't like the entourage for Twinmotion because they're not the highest quality. So I typically have their backs away from the actual camera, like so you're only seeing their backs, you're not seeing their faces, or you're seeing the side of their faces. I don't like, and some of the clothing is a little too distracting, so I try to find like muted clothing when it comes to individuals. For groups, it's not that big of a deal, but when it's more individuals in the front, so I go to characters and like posed humans, like let's go business. Like I want someone. These are all black and white clothing, like neutral clothing, right? But like I don't want this person facing when I'm looking at this view, right? I want them facing away, maybe over here. You go over here, right? And then even like sitting people, you can place sitting like this dude with the dog. I can put him right on this thing right here. You see, and just rotate it like that, you know? This, so that's people. And then, you can, there's a lot of other things that I would also add on here that gives it just a little bit more nuance. Like the more entourage you add on here, the better for like site context. So for example, in my library, if I go to, let me go to objects and let me do city and let me do planters. So this is really important. So like, adding tree planters, along edges. It's very important to do that. And I can double click on each of these items here. So like you see this here, this group, it's not like I'm locked into them, right? If I click on them, I can click on individual and like move this person wherever I want, right? Move this person wherever I want. They don't have to be like, you can edit things within groups if you wanted to, so like maybe, this one, goes over here somewhere. But when I'm doing like things like this, I like to add a lot of small little details to the site context because it really helps the rendering. It really helps like the mood of the scene, the context a lot. So things like this, even decals or benches for sure. Like putting things, benches help a lot. Uh, I'm gonna put this guy right here, and I might scale it up. Let me just scale it up. I swear this looks like I'm doing things random, but it's not. I'm just going through this fast so you understand. But this stuff isn't random. And then let me add like street signs as well. You want to do street signs. It's very important. So if I go back to city, streetlights is helpful, but actually do streetlights. Do something that helps either contrast with your design or blends into the design. Like I actually like this classical looking stuff. It helps contrast with like, a more modern, clean looking building. And so you can duplicate these again, right? So like I can take this, hold shift, duplicate it over here if I want to, right? I can do copy. And then signs as well, street signs is important. Like maybe like no driving, right? Like no driving symbol right here, right? So I swear doing this stuff is so helpful uh, in terms of like helping your context, okay? I think we have a lot of things set. I think one thing is I want to show you how to add context buildings, okay? So if I go back to library, there's something called Sketchfab, and you can try to find things in here like architecture, right? I have favorites in here already. You can download things on here. So like you have to make sure if you go to file and then you just sign in, you have to sign into Epic Games. You want to make sure you're signed into Epic Games because then you can download these and plug them into your model within the user interface. These are super helpful. So like I always use like these all the time. So like this oops, like this guy, I use this building all the time. I just drag it in here real fast. It's massive, I think. This guy, I use this like so many times in my reviews. They're so helpful. I put them here and I even like exaggerate the scale too. Like I make these massive like this. Yeah, so I love using these like a lot of these buildings. I mean, obviously, if you're using like a real building, like real context, site context, well, you want to use your site context buildings for sure, right? I don't like this motel symbol though. Let me do. There you go. Looks ambiguous now. And then maybe like I'm gonna do shift and take this, like rotate it. Ugh, yuck. Let me do 90. Or let me do 180, because no, not 180. Hmm. No, I like the other one. And I even make this even bigger. Yeah. And I'll just add these like weird buildings everywhere. See, this is massive. This is like, look how huge this is. This is massive. So when you get like these really massive buildings, just make sure to scale it down very small. So like make it like 0.1 or something. And that's still massive. That's huge. There you go, like that, 0.5. Maybe I move this one over here. This is all random placements for the buildings, but I just want to help with the context. And then I like even these little cities for like even more. This is massive. Again, I always like to scale it down dramatically just to see what I'm working with, just to see where like what I'm working with here. And again, if I hold like press a number, it'll like I think up to 5 or 6. It'll help me with the speed of the movement. So maybe we'll put this back here, and then I'll just scale it by eye. That move this. I know this looks messy, but all that matters is capturing your views. Okay. Because I just care about my views. Like like this. This is what I care about. My actual views. I don't care about the accuracy of like the actual model, like these like context models. You know? And you can edit these. Like if I click on here, you can click on individual objects. Like you see this, I can like get rid of this object or I can move it. I can move this object. So that's the nice thing about these. But again, I'm just trying to show you, how I modify these things. Like how I start creating scenes like this. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I want to show because I think I pretty much showed you everything. Let me go back to Rhino real fast. Let me see. Oh, it's because yeah, it's not piped. So let me just select these real fast. So this is a good example of autosync. Interesting. And then we do pipe diameter 0.5 inches. There you go. So now that should read. Yeah, there it is. Let me change the zoom. Ooh. You see the zoom, how quick it does by the rate you press it at? Yeah, there you go. So that helps. That helps a lot. Got scared for a second. So let me just click on this. Try it if I can. There you go. Panel lines. Let me go. And you see how I had auto sync on? Because I had auto sync on. It just showed up automatically. I didn't even do anything. Panel lines. And then select children. And then let me go to materials. And it's carbon. And let me do apply to selection. And you can just drag it on there like that. There you go. Oh, much better. Now I can. It's killing me. I got worried for a second. Now, see, that feels much nicer. You know? Again, this is gonna look much nicer once I have this like painted on, right? Once I have these things painted. If I click on this, I can always go back to my paintbrush here. I can click on this and I can start painting things here. I can make this smaller, diameter smaller, maybe like 2 feet here. Yeah. God, that's so dense. Everything's like so dense on here. I gotta change the density of these things. You know? I'm being a little cray cray here with the way I'm doing this. It should be much better. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start modifying more of this. I'm gonna just fast forward. I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna add. I'm gonna add maybe a ground material, and I'll show you. Maybe add some decals and add more entourage, add more context, and after that, I'm gonna show you just the scenes that I captured and how we can export these, and also material ID, which is very important, the layer ID, material ID. So I'm gonna transition over and just fast forward through here and just show you once I just clean things up with this model. Okay. Okay, everyone. So we're back, and I added a ground texture, as you can see right here. That's one thing I did. If I go to materials, I added a ground texture right here. You see? So right here, I think it's called cinder block. That's what I did, and pretty much I definitely did world space, and I changed the scale to make it 3.0. That's about it. Let me see down here if I change the XY. I did adjust the XY slightly. You know. So that's one thing I did before I transitioned over, and Obviously, I added way more entourage. I added buildings, more buildings. I spaced out the trees. I added bushes where I had to add bushes and trees and plants and painted more. You see? So this is everything I showed you in previous video. I just organized things. The only thing I added also was this, like these two bollards and like these floor grates. So again, if I go to objects and I go to city, you can find here bollards, right? Put them in there, go back to city, and I think decals might be wrong. Where is it? If you see, where are you decals? I don't know. Let me see, planters, fountains, trash cans. I think it's going to be objects, decals. Yeah, it's in decals. And like I added like these sewer grates here, So these things are helpful, It just gives us not like realism, but it just more of these small things help the rendering, Again, and if you notice, like even these small shadow lines help the rendering. You see my little frame. Remember how we added that little like point 0.5? You see, like that just adds a little bit more. It helps. Okay, so these things matter even here. So like if you notice, I just literally copied the same city from the Sketchfab and pasted it over here just to have a backdrop and added tree lining here. Oh, I'm sorry. I added trees lining here. Like, look how much backspace I have here. This is empty because I'm not rendering this. So it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not rendering everything, So don't worry so much about filling the entire site. Just only render what you see. That's it. Like, look at this. Like, I have like roofs floating out of nowhere. It's not a big deal. It's just render what you'll see, That's all. So I also went ahead and I saved some views. Okay, so let me just close this real fast. Here, if I go to my media, right, I have a bunch of views saved. I went ahead and saved some views. So we have this guy here, you see? And I did like different, because you can duplicate views. So like if you click on the three lines here, you can duplicate a view. You can even copy the ambience, like the scene settings, you can copy it to another rendering, right? So I tested out different views to see. And again, you see when you start adding entourage, it starts to help out in city and context. It just really changes the mood of the rendering. Okay? So this is okay. I don't like this big block of shadow. Well, honestly, it's not that bad. The nice thing about this is it has a lot of fog to it. So if I go to environment, you see, I think I gave it like more fog, like 63% fog. It gives a more textured look. This one's a little bit more flat, I would say. Takes time. This is more like at an angle. Again, you see, I either want shadows hitting the ground or shadows hitting the building. Okay, I need one or both happen at the same time. It just gives depth to the rendering, and having this contrast is nice too. This is a little bit more zoomed out. I think because this one, the tree is like literally right in the middle of the frame, and I don't. This lady needs to go, but whatever. Yeah, like this is not a good. This is bad. Bad entourage. Bad. Like this. First off, her shoes are too distracting. The quality isn't good. She's right in the middle. I should have just got rid of her, but that's okay. Again, more zoomed out. This is more 2/3. Like this is more, I guess, 2/3 of the frame, which is nicer, right? Instead of like right that center of the frame, you gain more of like the elongated length of the building, a little bit more sky, which we need, a little more texture. Even these things, don't even worry about these things. Not a big deal. We're not like trying to make super hyper realistic renderings here. And this is more than enough for like schematic design or studio work or competition work because we're gonna adjust things that we need to adjust. This is what nice with the shadow on here. This is overblown though. This is more zoomed in, you know? This is not bad. I mean, it makes the building more flat, but then you get nice shadowing and texture of the landscaping in front, you know? I like this one a lot. This is my favorite. Well, I think this is my favorite rendering. Really shows the contrast, of everything. It's beautiful. I think sometimes these can be problematic. Like this is not nice. The close-up is not nice. What I would do actually is put a real tree in front of this, like a collage, cut out a tree, because this quality is not good. But the composition's nice. I like the composition. Ah, this is my favorite because now see, I was trying to get this in here, and I think the reason why is because of my tree orientation. The way I had my tree oriented, it wasn't allowing light to come into it. It was blocking it too much. So I rotated my tree to get light more into it. And so if you see here, these decals help. Like the grades help, the bollards help. This helps, this little sewer, the no driving sign, the street lamps, the little benchy right here, the little street lamps again, tree planters, lady over here, I don't see her face, just back, ambiguous lady, person sitting here, person walking. Like, if you notice, again, like I said, I don't have any of them facing the camera. I don't want to see their faces because the quality isn't good and it's just a little too distracting. I just want to see their backs. And don't worry, they look like they're floating. That's just the preview settings. Like when you export it final rendering, it's going to be high quality. So don't worry about that. And if you notice here, again, the fog is helpful because, again, when I go to the Photoshop side, I'm going to show you more of the post-processing. Like, I want like this like slight textured look to this. And the fog gives you this like slight textured look to it. It's not hard to tell. Let me show you. If I turn it off, see, things are just a little bit more sharp and like more clean. I actually want it to be a little bit texture, like I want it to be a little bit dirty a little bit, right? So that's why I add a little bit of fog to this. And again, these views, the elevation views help the most with what I'm going to show you for the post processing. And just a quick aside, you see where it says like 100%, because I'm screen recording right now on like high quality screen, 4K screen, so it's like using up all of my graphics memory. But you can change the quality. Right now, I think my quality, if I do quality setup, I have it high. You can do ultra, right? So that's going to show you like pretty good, how can I say, like a pretty good accurate representation of the reflections, things like that. So that's really important to understand. If you don't have a high quality, then I would do it on low for your preview. But the final rendering is going to be nice. And so appearance, same thing with zooming in and out and things like that. These things are this is the most important to worry about for performance settings, okay? Same thing here for real-time rendering. Like if this is happening in real time, like when I'm moving through, like how quickly it's updating and things like that, this is important. We're not using path tracer, but we're always using real time. But again, like the reflection you see here is going to be different when we see it in the actual rendering. Okay. So let me just close this. Now, when it comes to exporting, right? First off, you want to decide your image size. So if I go on the right side here, your image, right? This is, just 1080p, but we can do 4K if you want to, right here. I can do 8K, okay? And I can do custom for your size. But before we even do exporting images, I gotta tell you about material IDs and render IDs. This is probably the biggest downside of Twinmotion when it comes to post-processing and rendering. They still need to have a better export of your IDs. So I would say like D5 and Enscape, they have fantastic render IDs and material IDs. It's like very helpful. Twinmotion is still getting there, but what I typically like to do is I like to combine my material IDs. So for example, I like to have my building as just like one big material ID separate from everything else. Okay. So like what I would do is I would select like, top mass. I can do like select sublayer objects or select children, right? Let me just deselect this. Sorry. Let me select these. And then I will give these a layer ID and I would do it to 1. Okay. Same thing for all of these. So basically for everything on here, I give them all the same material ID of 1 because I want the entire building to be just one big like mask separate from the environment. Okay, so I'll give a material ID of 1. Same thing with window. Material ID of 1, Same thing with frame. So it's really important that you give these material ID, okay? And just to be on the safe side, even on the layers, I enable it on the entire layer. But, I go in here and I'll select this, enable. Okay. Oh, wait. So for grass, I don't want that. So for grass, we'll make that like a 2. Okay, that's important. But for buildings, so anything related to buildings, like top mass, bottom mass, window, frames, I make that a material ID of 1. And then, for example, ground. If I go to ground, I don't know where it is because these are all over the place. But if I forget how I did my layers, but if I do ground, I want to give that a material ID of 2 because, so a grass border, let me enable this. And I'll give material ID of 3 with all this as well. I like double down and do it like that. So I want that material ID of 3. So I want this to be separate. And then you'll see what I mean once I show you the Photoshop side of what I'm doing with these material IDs. If you're not familiar with this, you're going to see it's very helpful. If you're familiar with this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me just explain as I'm scrolling. Material IDs are like basically going to give you separate masks for each. Like, so this, when it renders this image, it's also going to render like a multiple layers of like this masked out from everything else. So it's easy to select things in Photoshop. There's ground, right? So ground, I want to enable, and yeah, good. I don't know what this material ID is. I forget what it is, but I want to give each of these a material ID, okay? And that's super duper important when it comes to post-processing. The sky is already going to be there. Okay. So now when it comes to exporting, when I export this, right, you're going to scroll up here, and for image, you're going to click on your image, and I like just deselect everything, and I do the lumen because we're doing the lumen method. That's how we're going to render these things. And, you can select certain things you want to render at first just to test it out. Like maybe you want to do these, you can select all of them if you want to. And if you just move your mouse away, it'll just deselect. For format, I do PNG, and this is important. Let's go down here. I want to make sure I'm clicking on all of my material IDs because I want these to come as material IDs, okay? And I want to get my sky as well because they'll come as a separate mask. And then you can do export as masks. If you don't do that, it's going to make everything a black color except the ID itself. That will be in its like original diffuse render color, right? So like for example, this building thing here will be in its original render material, but everything else will be black if you don't have export as masks. So it's important to have export as masks, okay? Another important one is refinement. I always have my refinement as high because that's how clear the reflections are bouncing off of your reflective geometries and objects. So I always have refinement as high, okay? Now, once you do that, you'll just click on Start Export and you'll just pick a folder to save it to. And you're pretty much done, right? You do Start Export and you click somewhere you want to export, select a folder, and it'll drop all of them, the material IDs in a separate folder and then all the renderings in a separate folder, okay? And once you do that, you're done. I mean, because you have the masks and depending on how big you make your rendering, that's where it might take a while, right? So if I rendered all of these at once, I mean, and your performance of your computer, right? So like if you have a very strong graphics card, and a good CPU and a good GPU and good, RAM and stuff like that, it'll still take a while, but it won't take too much, and your computer can handle it. But if your computer's in struggle city with like an old graphics card, then I wouldn't try to render all of these at once; might crash. Just render them bit by bit and see how it works. So that's basically it, and I'm going to transition over now to the Photoshop side, and I'm going to show you the post-processing of everything on here, okay? But just quickly, I'll show you these exports because I've already done this, but like you see, I get like, this is the masks I'm getting, right? So you see like how this is like a separate mask from everything else. That's what the material IDs are doing and other things. So yeah, I'm going to transition over and then that's the last part of this video, which is the Photoshop side. Hi everyone. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop and now I'm going to show you how to do the post-processing. And as I said in the beginning of the video, I actually do not like to spend too much time on post-processing because if you're an architect or a designer, or even like an intern, you have a lot of other things to do. Even as a student, where you have other classes to attend to or just other deadlines, and maybe you have to build a physical model, you have to do drawings. So I don't like to spend too much time on post-processing, but I still want to show you some fundamentals of post-processing and also creating these like textured, moody type of rendering aesthetics that some people may like, some people may not like them at all. So I'll walk you through all of them. This is really, again, geared towards people who are beginning or maybe intermediate in this level of architectural representation. So I hope you find this helpful. And again, I feel like these types of renderings are great for architectural studio, academic level, competition level as well, and even like schematic design level, even at like a professional level, like schematic design. But anything beyond that, I think it requires even like deeper accuracy just to manage clients' expectations. And I'll talk more about this towards the end of the video. And I'll show you multiple rendering setups. So like, I'll show you how I set up this rendering and this rendering as well, right? But I'm going to just show you like a step-by-step post-processing for this rendering, and the same processes translate to every other rendering that I do with some slight adjustments, which I'll show you. So let's just go ahead and get started on this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our material IDs, and it comes in a separate folder. So remember when we exported our rendering from Twinmotion, you put in a folder, the material ID will come in a separate folder that matches your view name with it, right? So like it'll come in these separate folders. If you go down here, right, these are like all the original renderings that it exported to, and it comes in with these folders for each rendering, right, with its own material ID. So like, you have your sky, and then these are the other IDs you assign them to, like that's the ground, that's maybe the window, I think. This is the massing. So we can take these, right, and just drag them into Photoshop over the image. And I just keep pressing enter to accept its placement, but I do something with the placement. So what I do with the placement is I'll just select these layers together. And then what I'll do is I'll do Control A, right? And then I'll go to the direct selection tool up here, and I'll make sure that it's aligned center, like center vertical, center horizontal, like right here and right here, just to confirm everything's aligned on top of each other, stacked on top of each other. So, these are all my passes, right? So like for some, I know, like for example, I like to rename them. Like I know that's my sky right here. I know this is my ground right here. I know that this is my massing, right? I have no idea what this is, but it's okay. Let me see. Yeah, this is my windows. Window, massing, sky, and then I think these are like the panels, the panel lines, but it's okay. Honestly, I'm not going to use some of these. And so these render IDs are very helpful when it comes to selecting specific things. So like for example, the ground, right? I can go in and I can select, very specific things for the ground, right? So that's the example of render ID. But like I said in the previous video, I would say Enscape and D5 probably do a better job at giving you much more render passes, like your render ID, object ID, material ID, where it's much easier to select certain elements. Twinmotion is still, I think, developing this. I mean, at the end of the day, Twinmotion is for free, so like I have no complaints. But it is something that I hope they maybe put more emphasis on in the future. But I mean, for me, this is enough. But it is easier to work with like material IDs, object IDs, and render IDs because they're more differentiated with separate colors and stuff like that. So once we have these render passes in here, there's something that's a little not weird, but something that you have to do if you want to go for more of that rendered, textured, painted, collagey look. Okay, and we're gonna take a classical painting, specifically a American Romanticist paintings. I think anything from like the Romanticist period, it works very well for like a collagey backdrop with like a painted backdrop. It helps so much, and you'll see what I mean. Like for example, if I go to this rendering here, like you see this is from an actual real painting, right? And again, I'm going to do step by step showing you how we get that, and I'll move to the other renderings. But we need to grab like a painting, right? A real painting and put it as the sky instead of the real sky. This helps so much because in principle, to get like this like collagey look, you actually need to have, in my opinion, like a stark contrast between certain elements. But I'm doing a shortcut. Instead of putting like actual collages of trees and people, we're gonna just work with what we have, and the only main collage-esque item is gonna be the sky. And so what I do is I like to use like actual real classical artwork. So specifically from like the Romanticist period, because the Romanticist period just has very dramatic skies, dramatic landscapes. And so if you go here, so like I'm on the National Gallery's website, and all these are on public domain, so anyone can use these. So I mean, there's a lot of amazing artists from the Romanticist period, and I think there's an American landscape school. It's called the Hudson River School. They have people who just have like these beautiful, like dramatic, theatric paintings that you can use as your backdrop, specifically for landscapes, because they worked a lot on landscapes. So obviously, Thomas Cole is like, I guess people consider him like the OG, the GOAT of this. But you have other people. I really like Worthington Whitridge is also awesome. So this is the one that I'm using for almost all of my renderings because the sky is kind of like neutral, it's tame. It works well in a lot of different environments. It works well like in a sunny day or a cloudy day or a neutral day. And maybe you want less clouds, so you can go over here. You want more clouds, you can go over here. So I love this painting actually, and it works even for like the backdrop here. It's fantastic. So, and again, these are all public domain, and so I just download these, and then I drag it into the Photoshop file. So that's one big major trick that you should use if you want that more like collagey textured look. Okay, and so I just save it and then I drag it into Photoshop. Okay, so and if there's other paintings you like, go ahead and use other paintings. But this is the one that I really like to default to. Okay, so if we go here, I have it already here, right? But we'll work on that later. First, I want to do like some like major adjustments that I do to all of my renderings, all right? Before we do any like textured look or anything like that, maybe you just like it like this, and that's totally fine. Maybe this is good for you. And if that's good for you, that's fine, There's like 4 or 5 major adjustments that I always do when I work on these types of drawings. One of them is the color balance tool. So if you go here and I do color balance, this really basically helps give the you can say like the color temperature of the image, but it really just helps cool things down or warm things up. So for this one, I want to play around with the color balance a bit. Sometimes I want to make it just a little bit cool, not too cool or too warm. For some reason, when I see this rendering, I want it more like on the warm side. So I think, yeah, 10 is nice, and then yellow is going to make it even warmer. So, but see, you don't make it too warm. It looks sick. It looks sick. So just like very, like you want to be a little bit like not too much, not too much like that. And then you go to your shadows, and you'll do the same thing with your shadows. And so shadows, I typically go in the opposite direction. Let me see. Not too much. Again, not like you don't want to push it too much because it gets a little too dark. But I do want a little bit dramatic in here, and maybe. I still want it warm. You can see this kind of makes it cool and warm. I want it just a little bit warm, like that. Okay. If you want it more realistic, right? Like you're going to be very careful with your color balance. But again, I'm going more for like this like dramatic, moody, contextual rendering. Okay. So color balance is very important. The next thing I also do are curves. Curves is very important. So if you go to curves, my adjustment layer. So in my curves, typically people like to do like S curves for their brightness and contrast. For this one, I actually just want to do almost like I'll show you. Like I'm gonna pull this up to brighten up the image. You see how things just get brighter? Everything just gets brighter, but not too much. Okay, like this. If I do an S curve, you get the basic contrast. You see how things contrast, but that's way too much. Everything is overblown. Shadows are too. I actually want to not. It's not an S curve. It's more of like a bump. It's like a valley, kind of. So like this. You see how the shadow lightens up here, so I can see a little bit more of the exposure here. So this is what I kind of want to aim with. So this helps. So again, I'm not being too extreme here. It's not. You don't want to be too extreme with these things. So I think it's not bad. Okay. I think this is nice. Let me show you the difference, okay? So that's like this. See, it is a little bit overexposed, but it's okay actually. Let me just bring it down a little bit. There you go. So this. You see the difference? The same thing with color balance. That was before. So you see, it was kind of very blue, but remember I had the fog. Remember how I had the fog in the Twinmotion setting? That's on purpose because I wanted to have this like kind of textured look in the actual air. So that's the fog, and so that's why it has kind of like this like hazy blueness or hazy. It's like hazy cool, and you see how this is like much warmer now, right? So that's what the color balance does. the I also like to do like the contrast, but I'll do that a little bit later. So, but these adjustments are very helpful, and maybe you want to make adjustments just to the building or just to the ground. So let me just show you a quick example. Like maybe I want to make adjustments just to the ground, for example, right? So I can select something like this, right? And then I can go here and click on the main one, and I can do the adjustment layer, and let's do brightness and contrast for now. So you see this will only adjust just what I select, you see? So that's why render passes are so important. And again, this is geared more towards like beginners, right? Like this is why your render IDs, object IDs, material IDs, depths and stuff like that, so important when it comes to touching up your renderings, all right? I don't need this though. I just want to let you understand the process. I also, the main rendering, I always call it beauty. It's called your beauty pass. And then I always make a duplicate of it because I don't want to touch the original because I'm always going to make modifications to the original. All right. So Again, I'll do curves, color balance. The other one I do is brightness and contrast. And the other one also is hue and saturation, and maybe levels. But for now, we'll just work with these two. But yeah, I would say like the four main ones are the ones I just said right now. Now, now we're gonna start like adjusting the passes on here and giving things like certain looks and certain aesthetic feels. The first thing I want to do is the sky. Okay, so I want to work with the sky here, right? So for the sky, I'm actually gonna move it all the way up here. Move the sky all the way up. Okay, so it's gonna be up here, right? And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to select the sky and make a mask for it. So if I select the sky one, turn this on, and if I go to, for example, instead of doing the magic wand, I like to do this. I like to do color range, okay? And I like to do the plus. And so it means you can do multiple selections of certain colors. So I want to select just this and this, like that. And you can move this to adjust it to be like a sharper selection or a more loose selection. You are going to have some like feathering if you have more of like a loose selection where like it goes around, not exactly or precisely, but for the sake of this, I mean, you can accept the default settings if you want to and just see how it works out. But you see this selects like everything I need, right? I got everything in here. It could have selected more, like it's selecting some stuff inside here as well. In essence, I would also want to get this, but it's okay. For now, this sky selection is good, right? And I'll show you. So then I'll unhide this. So it has this as my sky selection, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a mask. I'm going to give this a mask. By the way, this is a smart object right now, which is good. All of the images that I want to edit, I'm gonna either convert them to a smart object or they should be a smart object. Okay, and you'll see why later. So I'm gonna turn this on and I'm gonna put a mask on this. Okay, so I'm gonna mask this. So if I just click here for mask, now this has become a mask. You see, everything's a mask. So and you see here, if you invert, so the white is what stays and the black is what gets cut out in your mask. All right, just so you understand. So if I invert it, like if I do Control I, you see, and you can paint things, like you can brush things on your mask to add things. Like you have a paintbrush tool right here, and you have to make sure it's black and white. You can like take things to your mask and erase it if you wanted to, right? So if I inverse this, like press D, you see, so the mask is very important in terms of just understanding for post processing. And right now it's linked. All right. I don't want it linked because right now I want to move the sky around. So if I press V, like I want to move the sky up. Oops, excuse me. I clicked on the mask. I click on the rendering. I want to move the sky up, for example, right? Move the sky down, move the sky up, like this. So that's why I don't have it linked. If you have it linked, it's going to move it with the mask selection, which I don't want, right? So the sky is important. What I do with the sky is very important, all right? So you see it's coming in the reflections as well. Like you see how it's coming into here as well. But, and I can scale this up a little bit more. So what you do with the sky is very important. Like, where you want the clouds. Maybe you want less cloud, maybe you want more cloud. I think the clouds are nice. It gives it character to the rendering. So I like it like that. And if you don't want it showing up on here, you don't have to. You can delete it from the mask, right? So if I go on the selection tool here and go here, like you can delete things from the mask if you wanted to, right? You see? But it's really up to you. Let me just do this for a second. Let me just go around here. Just want to check. I actually like it like that, to be honest. No, I like it. I like it like this. I think it matches sky. I might go back and change it, but yeah. So, I mean, maybe you just like it like this. Maybe you just want like a collagey sky and you're done. So that's fine. Maybe some people like that. So, but we're going to go just a little bit more now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to texturize this rendering to give it more of like a painted look. And the reason why I like these types of renderings where it's like not perfect is number one, it allows you to just use your own imagination to place yourself in there, because the more hyper realistic it is, the more it seems definite and final. And I think that's great when you're presenting things to like clientele when their decisions are firm. But if you're like presenting big ideas to clientele where they still want rooms to adjust, or even to like communities, sometimes you don't want things to look too final because it either intimidates them or they make them think they don't have a say in the design if you show things as if like it's 100% resolved. So again, I think hyperrealism definitely has a place and a necessity where you need to show things, not need to, but it benefits you to show things in a hyperrealistic manner. And other times it's actually a drawback. So I like to do it more because I think it does capture the mood of the context and the design within the context when you kind of take it a little bit away from like hyperrealism and give it just a little bit, I guess, more playfulness or like moodiness or attitude or personality. So what we're going to do is I made a copy of this layer and you can just drag it down to the new layer to make copies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert to smart object. That's the first thing I'm always going to do, right? So when I convert this to smart object, what I want to do is add a mask to this because I want to exclude the building or the design from the context. The reason why I want to do that is because that also helps in like creating like a collage look. So if I go here, like if I go to my massing, right? I can do like select objects if I wanted to, or select color, right? So I always like to do the select color versus the one. So I do like select color range, right? Let me go in here. I can select that color range. And so it'll give me basically, it'll get some stuff up here, which is not that big of a deal, right? So that's what I want. And if I uncheck, right? So this is what it's going to get me. It's excluding the frames here, which is fine. It's not that big of a deal. And if I want to include that in there, right, I can just go into the selection tool and do the additional selection and bring these in here as well if I wanted to, right? So, or I can even hold shift. Like I can take this and I want this in here as well. I want that in there as well. If I'm holding shift, by the way, I want these in here as well, right? So just an FYI. And then maybe like you want to exclude things. Like maybe I don't want, you see the sky here? You can do the subtraction one and it'll subtract this from the selection. So this is what we're working with here, right? So once you have that selected, what you can do is create a mask out of that. So I just create a mask down here and that becomes a mask, okay? So everything else here is excluded, right? So if you see that? So here I want to do Control I. So let me do Control I, So it's going to make edits to everything except the building. And, the Windows is okay, but it'll make edits to everything else except the building. I think the windows are showing up because this is part of the sky mask. The sky is showing its reflection in the windows, which is something I want actually. So if I turn this off, let me show you. They go away. All right. So let me just click on here. So now I want to make adjustments to this. And the reason why I converted a smart object is because I want to make very specific adjustments to the layers and go back and edit it if I want to. All right. So there's a couple things that I want to do here, right? So for this environment here, I'm going to use two filters, okay? I'm going to use the filter gallery and I'm going to use maybe like the oil paint one. So if I go to filter and then like filter gallery, right? I'm going to do the film grain on here, okay? And for the film grain, don't be alarmed by this. This looks extreme, but don't worry. We're gonna go back and we're gonna tone everything down. So everything might look extreme in here, but we're gonna tone everything down, right? So the grain's a little too much, to be honest. We're gonna just bring it down like here. Highlight area. This will affect all the highlights. I honestly don't want it to affect any of the highlights, right? And then intensity, that's, how dark and bright this is, right? So like you see it gets really bright like that, right? So not too much, just like maybe 2. And again, remember, it's not going to affect the building yet because we have it on a mask. So it's going to affect the environment, but nothing else, okay? So if I do okay, you see, it's on everything except the building. If I turn the building on, you see how the building stands out from this? And we want that because it gives you like that textured collage look that I was talking about. But again, don't worry, we're going to tone this down, okay? And then the next one that I like to do is I like to do the oil paint. So filter oil paint. And for the oil paint, I don't like to go too crazy with this because it starts to make things a little too grainy, or not grainy, but maybe just it takes it too far away from what I'm aiming for. Like you see, this looks like one green blob, for example. I don't like that. I want some like contrast and texture. So I don't like to go crazy with this. Like I actually bring a lot of these things down. You see, even this, I bring this down as well. Direction is good to play with because maybe you can get it parallel to this. Even the shine, like let me show you what happens. The shine is actually the most distracting. You see the shine? Like you have to be careful with this. Like you have to be really subtle with these adjustments. So like shine, honestly, I don't even go crazy with the shine. Yeah, maybe like a 0.4, like that. And angle directions, whatever you prefer. Some angle directions work better than others. Just go like that. Nice. So if you see here, you see how it's more detailed here, but then it's less detailed over here. That's what typically happens. And again, we're going to tone this down. Right now, everything's at 100%. We're going to tone it down. But see, the reason why we do smart objects, criminal smart objects, because we can go back and edit this. Maybe you don't like this. Like you just double click on it. Maybe you don't like this. You can just go back and like adjust this. So you want less grain or more grain. You get what I'm saying? And you can even hide it too. Like on here, you can turn it off if you don't want to, right? So that's why I always have things as smart object. Very, very important, okay? Now, so I'm gonna make a copy of the beauty one again. Go here, I'm gonna convert it to smart object, like that. And I'm gonna hold Alt and just put this here as well. But I'm gonna do the inverse now. I'm gonna do Control I and inverse it. And so this one, it's going to select everything, excuse me, it's going to select only the building, nothing else, okay? So that's important to understand. It's going to select the building, nothing else, okay? So for the building, I want to add the same filter to this, the film grain filter. So if I do filter, and then I do filter gallery, and I want to do film grain, but I'm sorry, I have this, you always have to select the rendering, I'm sorry. Filter gallery, right here, film grain. Now, this is only going to be just on the building now, right? Not on the context. So I want it even not as intense, like maybe 4. Let me see, that's 0. So I think 4 is nice. And then intensity. No, I actually want this pretty dark. Even 0 is not bad, to be honest. Let me see 1. Even 1's, because 1's not bad, but nothing more than 1, because it gets too overexposed. Like it's too much overexposure. There you go, nice. So now we have this and this, okay? Okay, great. So now we have these 3 adjustments here. And like I said, we're going to tone it down. So you see right now, this has an opacity of 100. I'm going to bring it down. Like I don't want it this much. Like I want to bring it down to maybe, you see, it's only adjusting the context, you see? So we go down to like 75, 60, 50. I don't know. We're going to see. I think like 65 isn't bad. It's not too strong. And the same thing with the building here. I'm going to bring this down even more. So I'm going to bring it down to, see, it's not too much like this. You see how it's like super smooth? 34. You see how now it's like really grainy? So we'll bring it down to like maybe, honestly, 50 is like a good balance, like that. Okay? So now we know we're bringing back the original detail from the rendering. Okay? So we're bringing back the original detail from the original rendering. Now, there's a couple more adjustments that you can do to really push this, but I want you to keep in mind, I have the original beauty on. That's why I brought these opacities down so that it's laying over the original. Okay? So just remember that. Like you have to have this on, because if I have this off, you see, so that's why I have the main beauty on here. Okay? And you can do layer blending, but honestly, I'll show you other things that you can do that you don't need to do layer blending. And again, here's our little sky up here. All right? Now, so everything we have here is good. So the other thing that I want to do is I actually want to add a color filter and a color overlay to this. And you'll see why I want to do this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do like a warming filter. So if I go to here, I'm going to do like a photo filter. I like to do warming filters. I like them a lot. They're very cool. Or not just warm, any filters are really helpful. You can do hue and saturation, but warming filters help out immensely. So I'll do a warming filter, and then I'm going to do solid color. And we'll just do okay for now. Let me turn these off for a second. Okay, for solid color, I want to actually change this color, okay? Because I want it to have this warm overlay to it, right? Like this, I don't know, I want to like kind of brownish color. No, that's too yellow. Yeah, this is actually nice. Let me do this. 45 and 48. And maybe do 10. I like whole numbers, but I think that's nice. Let me turn this on. All right, great. And if I hold Alt, it's only going to adjust and it's only going to apply to the layer directly beneath it. Let me show you. So right now it's doing to the whole rendering. If I do Alt, you see it's only going over this building here, right? So this, and we're not done yet. So I'm going to give it like an overlay to this, okay? So when I hold Alt, that gives it a very helpful color overlay. Now we're going to do something interesting. We're going to do a color blend to this, okay? So, or a layer blend here from these layer blends. What I like to do when I do this color overlay, there's three different blends that I like to do depending on the rendering. I like to do either difference, exclusion, hue, or color. Those are the four that I like to do. And I'll show you the different effects that you get depending on what you pick. So if you do hue, you see, it will put that hue over this environment, right? It'll change the hue. It's almost like hue and saturation, but a little bit more subtle, right? And it gives it more like collage poppy look, all right? And if you think this is too much, because don't forget, this is already at 60%, like 60% opacity, remember? Or 65 or whatever. It's at a low opacity, so it's not gonna be that intense, right? We can bring this down even lower if we don't like it. Like I can bring this down maybe like 50%. You see, so you're still getting some of that green in there, but it has this overall warm hue to it, right? Let me show you. See the difference? Okay, that's one option. Now there's another option. So hue is one of them. The other one is difference. Difference is very interesting. So if I do difference there. So for difference, this feels more, I would say, like collagey because you see the color of the actual design. It completely pops compared to the color of the context. So this feels more like collagey or collage-esque, right? Because everything just seems like it's popping, right? Some people might like this, and we can adjust the color temperature of this to like slightly match this if we wanted to, with because we already have the mask for it anyway, right? Right here we have the mask for it, so like I can make a copy and adjust the hue and saturation for this. I'll give you an example. Like I can go and make a, or I'll do a color balance one. I do color balance and hold Alt, right? And I can adjust it to make it just as cool as the context, but not too cool. You know, you see where it's like, I mean, that looks like it's blue, but there you go. You don't want it too blue. And shadows is what's going to pop it more. You see? So you can do something like to like blend it in with this type of context more. So it's not like super warm, you know, like that. You see? That's if you want this. So this kind of feels more poppy, more collagey with color. So that's another option for people who like that, right? And I know some people are like, dude, this is crazy. Like you just took a realistic rendering and made it look unrealistic anymore. But again, this is intentional. So this is an option, okay? And you know, again, you can like lower its effects of this by like making it, you know, bringing the opacity down, okay? So I just want you to understand the options you have here, all right? And then the other one is color. So we did difference, color. Let me show you color. So you see the color is way more intense. It's way more intense. I personally like to do hue. I like to do hue. It's more subtle, you see? And just one other thing, just to go back. If I would do the difference with the collage poppy thing, right? If I go here, the darker you make it, the less intense it's going to be. So let me show you. If I go down here and make this, you see that? See how, like if it's completely black, you see? It almost goes back to the hue look more than anything else. You see? But with the lighter you give it the color, see the whiter it is, it's more faint. But the whiter, I guess in this value, this color value spectrum, right? The more saturated color value spectrum, it gives it more of like a contrast and that collage poppy look, where it pops, high contrast, collage-esque look. You know what I'm saying? So that's if you have it on the difference and you change the color and make it either lighter or darker, okay? So, I mean, let me know in the comments what you like, but, and I'll show you the exports of all the different styles. But again, I'm gonna stick to hue, okay? I like this, okay. Now, there's other things I can do on here. So we have photo filter. I can probably do, let me see if, I'm gonna do photo filter just to the environment. So when I do just an environment, you see how it doesn't hit the building anymore because I hit Alt and it's just adjusting just this one, the environment one, right? If I do it, does everything. You know, I actually like that yeah, I like it when it's just on the environment, leaves the building alone, you know? Now, there's one or two other things we can do. We can add the brightness contrast on here for the entire rendering if we want to. We can do brightness and contrast here. Let me see, get just a little bit contrast, you know, this is nuts. So just like a little bit contrast, just not too much. Brightness, no. I mean, this seems more collagey, but it's too muted. But maybe someone might like it. Like this. I think, let me see before. Yeah, actually this contrast helps because it pops out the panels more. Let me go. I can also adjust this with the levels, to be honest. Again, because maybe some beginners are watching this. Let me show you. If I do levels and I punch the dark, you know, just a little bit. You want to be very like, not too much with this stuff, like that. I think that helps too. Okay, fantastic. Now for the sky up here, because I like the color temperature on here, the sky actually matches the color temperature. So I don't need to change the color temperature of the sky. But let's say we went with the difference, right? We did the difference one, right? Or maybe, because maybe the sky is looking a little too gloomy and we want to make the sky look brighter. So I'll go back to the different, you know, how we switch to the difference. I'll go back to that later and show you. But let's say we're sticking to this style, but the sky looks a little bit too gloomy compared to how bright the scene is, right? One thing you can do is try to find a brighter part in the sky. You know, find like a brighter portion of the sky, but this is pretty like cloudy as is. I'll just keep it as is right there. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to do brightness and contrast. Okay, I'm gonna hold Alt. So it's only affecting the sky. I want to make it just a little bit brighter. You see, there you go. I mean, these things are so important. These are so subtle. These things are so subtle, but I swear it really affects the rendering in a very, you know, very like in a very impactful way. Like you see, the difference between this and this is just huge, right? So you have to be very careful with how much you add to these things. But I definitely want it just a little bit brighter. I'm looking around all over from left to right, right? Because you see how bright this is. Like as the original, even the original rendering, this is quite bright. So I don't want the sky to look so dark, and this is like so bright. It makes no sense. Even though I'm saying not to be hyper realistic, there's things that like help that create like a balance to the eye. You know. There you go. That's cool. Um, yeah, you're pretty much done. Like you know, you're done with this. Like that's it. We're done. But I want to show you something. Let me go back to this real fast because I want to show you all the options and possibilities. Let's say, for example, you know, instead of the hue layer blend, we want to do difference. Again, you see how this is super cool? The sky doesn't like really match this. The sky, I'm telling you people, the sky is very, very important with this. It's like kind of the foundation of the entire aesthetic. but the sky doesn't match this. So what I'll do if you want to do this, you can add a color temperature to this one. Excuse me, a color balance. And again, hold Alt. These stack, so it'll just always adjust this one and make this more cool. You want to make it more cool, right? Like that, you know, just want to make it a little bit more cool. Same thing with shadows, not too much. Just there you go. Like that, you know? You see the difference of the sky, how it changes? It starts to blend the environment more because you want the sky to match the environment. So that's if you did that. I just want you to be aware, like I want you to be aware of these things, right? So not just you just stacking layer adjustments. Just you have to keep your eyes peeled for these things. But yeah, that's about it. So I don't want this actually because I like the original one though. The where am I? Hue. I like this more. I like this a lot. Okay, so that's basically the process for or the post. Oh yeah, for post processing for these to get like this type of style. Again, if you don't like this style, you don't have to do it, right? You can just honestly just stick to this if you like it just like this, you know? This is with none of the texture funny business, just straight up rendering. Like this is just straight up rendering by itself, nothing more, nothing less. Any of the sky is up here, but whatever. Even if you don't like the sky, you know, you can peace out on the sky and you go back to the original, you know? And you can just have this, and this is the original, nothing too serious, you know what I'm saying? So it's really a matter of preference, but I like this moody textured look. I like it. I like it. I don't like things to be hyper realistic unless it has to be. My only there's like a lot of critiques I have even of this stuff. The entourage or not, this is not good entourage. Like this entourage, like again, too colorful, too colorful. I don't like how dramatic this person is. I don't know this person was going to be looking up like this. I don't like that. Like I don't like the entourage to be too distracting. Like this is just person's looking too up. I should have rotated this person that way. Another thing you can do is add like actual PNG people, like cutout people, to make it even more collagey if you wanted to. You know, but see, like I like this person. I like this person. Like the group of people here are very helpful, right? People here are very helpful. This is very helpful. These three people, and again, like I said in the very first part of this video, right? Like these things, these like frames, even this black frame. Remember how this little tiny black frame here that juxtaposes this. This is so important for like modeling, even at a very basic like schematic level, right? Like these, even the division lines are just super important, right? These things are really important to help you distinguish and have hierarchy of like materials between certain different, you know, different types of materials. Even this like division line here, right? Just the acknowledging that depth and acknowledging depth of material, acknowledging placement of material is so important, you know, and it's very basic. You saw how quickly we modeled it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you other renderings that I did and show you, I'm not going to go through this whole, because it's the exact same process, but I just want to show you how I adjusted them, right? So for example, if we go here, see, this is another one, you see? And literally same process, but for this one, I'm going to start with the sky, right? So for the sky, you see, I shifted around, right? So that it's a little bit more sky and less cloud. But I also, you see all the adjustments I did to it. I gave it a color balance. So before it was more yellow, now it's more blue. I made it much brighter. See, it was dark, now it's much brighter, right? And then hue and saturation. See, like I took away a little bit of the color by desaturating it. Okay. And then down here, right? So photo filter I applied to the entire rendering. You see, I applied it to everything for photo filter. But if I go down here for color fill, this one I'm doing hue again, right? But you don't have to. I'm doing hue. And this one I'm also doing hue and saturation because I felt like this is a little bit too saturated. Let me bring it down. So you don't have to, like, but I brought down the saturation on here. I brought it down. So it's taking away a little bit of the color for the environment. This is just for the environment, you see? If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. Another intense one is color. You see color, that's like way too intense. But I do hue and saturation. But see, this is because I have this at 100% right now. I have this at 100%. I can tone it down more if I wanted to. But I like this at 100%. Sometimes you don't have to tone things down. So that's why it depends on rendering. That's why I'm showing these to you. And then and same thing with the effects. I'm doing oil paint. And this is film grain. let me check. And then this is the main beauty pass, right? The other one, this is just on the building, right? So let me show you right here. This is just on the building right here. So if I go to filter gallery, I'm doing the paint daubs on this one. On this one, I'm doing paint daubs. And actually, you see this fringing going on here? I like this fringing. I like it because it makes it more collagey. Some people might hate it and say this is horrible, but I actually like this fringing that's going on here. So the paint jobs is, I did film grain on both the building and environment. For this one, I'm doing film grain on the building. And but it's not too intense. It's very subtle, just 1 and 5, not too much. You actually don't want to go more than 1 for brush size because it becomes like blurred. And same thing with sharpness. I would not go more than 5. Let me show you what happens if I go 0. It becomes like really soft. You see? But if you start bumping it more, you see? You do 4 or 5. Let me show you brush size. It just loses all image. So that's why. Keep it at 1 for paint jobs. And that gives this like a slight texture to it, slight sharpness to it. And then let me see. Yeah, this is at 60% right here. So you see this is at 60%. And then I have this at, I think, 100%. And that's it for that rendering. That's it. And I'll show you final exports again, like I said. Okay, and so here's this one, right? Again, I think I put the sky in the bottom on this one. Let me see. Yeah, for this one, I put the sky in the bottom for, maybe I was just working differently here. But I put the sky in the bottom. One thing I forgot to mention, this type of style works great on elevations. So like if we go back to, like you see on elevations, it looks fantastic on elevations. And again, you see the sky really helps on this. So yeah, but this type of aesthetic works great on like perspective elevations. On regular perspectives, it's fine, but it's a little bit more difficult to get that look to it, but because it's not like super flat anymore. But on perfect elevations, it's fantastic. And so again, let me just show you the adjustments. Like on this one, I gave it, right? I gave it the film grain and then the oil paint on the environment. Just in the environment, not on the building. Right? Not on the building. And then on the building, right, I gave it a, let me show you. I think it's paint daubs. Yeah, I did paint daubs again. But this one even more subtle, 1 and 3 instead of 1 and 5 for the sharpness. That's all. And this is at 60% opacity right here. And then I made adjustments to the sky. You see the sky, I gave it adjustments. Like again, I made it brighter, you see? And the color balance, I changed the color balance, make it more blue. Honestly, the yellow isn't that bad. But I do like the contrast. And then the hue and saturation, just taking away a little bit of the color. Okay? And then other adjustments, I actually made a brightness contrast to the actual environment. Let me show you. Like the entire environment's brighter. And even to the building, I brightened up the building. The top, this is the top mass, you see? I made that brighter. Bottom mass, made that brighter. You see? And so like, let me just show you, like if I click on bottom mass, right, and I do select color range, right, and I click on this one, right, I can deselect these as well if I don't want. I can deselect everything that I don't want here, right? And you see here, I can increase the brightness and contrast just at the bottom mask, right? So if I go here and then go to beauty, and I can click on it, do brightness contrast, like that. You see, that's what I got. That's what this is down here, right? So you see, I can make it bright. You see, so that's what I did. I made it brighter as well. And then I did overall adjustments to the entire rendering. So I brought down the hue and saturation. You see, this is like, it was a little bit green. I made it less green. And then color balance, let me see. Just, I made it a little bit warmer. It was cool. I made it a little bit warmer. And brightness contrast, I made it more bright. That's all. I mean, that's about it. So I'm gonna transition over and just show you like final exports of these images and like maybe layouts, and I'll show you like the contrast of the before and afters for some of these. Okay. So let me just transition over and I'll show you that. Hi everyone. So these are the final exports. You should save your files obviously as a Photoshop file, but after that, save it as a TIFF if you can, if you have the file size. Right now, I have these as like very high quality JPEGs, but you should save them as TIFFs in my opinion, because I think they, TIFFs are lossless. Same thing with PNG, but they're lossless, and it's just very high quality in terms of you have to resave it again. I have this as a JPEG again just to save space, but I would save these as TIFFs, and you don't need to save the layers. And maybe towards then I'll show you how to just save them as TIFFs. But this is the textured version, right? If you can tell right away by the sky, right? And down here you can see the comparison of the two, right? And I'll zoom in. But again, just as a big idea thing, right? You see how important landscaping is? Like landscaping just really changes the mood of the context, right? And then obviously entourage, like I said, I have them all looking away, right? I just don't want people looking at you when I'm in these types of views, and elevation views really help. And again, like I said, panel lines, the spatial lines, the division lines, these small tiny axes, they all help in the rendering. And these tiny little entourage items, people of course, but lamppost, tree, the signs here, the trees here, the bench here, people sitting, different types of entourage, not the same type of different types of entourage, I think is very helpful, right, when it comes to these renderings. And I'll show you zoomed in versions of these, but you see, and again, teach their own. Maybe you don't like this style, maybe you like this style, right? This guy's a little mute, like a little boring, but maybe you like this style more. So it's up to you. I'll show you a version where it's just, see, this is just like, Photoshop, Twinmotion, and just, enhancements of brightness, contrast, color balance. That's it. None of the texture, funny business, right? So you see the difference? Maybe some people like this aesthetic. It's a very different type of, it's a very moody. There's like a mood to this, right? There's a mood to this. There's almost like a narrative to this. This one's, it's up to you. I feel like this is more like polished, but again, not like super hyper realistic for like an archivist person. So it's really your choice, right? Okay, so this one actually is like a very textured version of the one that I just showed you right now. So the one that we worked on wasn't as textured as this. I went ahead and made this even more textured, right? So like you see here, the building's like very textured. The one I was showing you earlier wasn't like this intense. Even like look at the people. People are very textured. The one thing about this composition I would say is that there's like too much ground. So if you have like too much ground, you can either use it as like a backdrop for like diagrams, plans, or like even text, right? But if I was gonna crop this, I would like go like very much in like this to balance out the sky, like this, right? And balance out sky and ground. Okay. And so there's not too much here. Maybe like, yeah, like that. Get more like this, right? I think this is like a good crop, and I'll show you a zoomed in version of this. But again, remember, this is like super textured. And let me just go to Photoshop real fast to show you how I got this texture, because the other ones I showed in the video, I was using a different effect, but maybe some people might like this. I think it's a little too much, but let me just show you anyway, just in case. Let me go back to Photoshop real fast. So what I did here, right, if you go to filter gallery, right, if you go to brush strokes, either use accented edges or use sprayed strokes, right? But you don't want to do like too much. It can get very intense for your stroke length. You see, the more stroke length, the less detailed, the smaller is, the less detailed it is, the smaller number. The larger the stroke length, the more detailed it is. And the spray radius, so you can also do accented edges, or excuse me, only sprayed strokes. The other one is angled strokes. You can do as well, but again, you have to play around with these. So if you want that effect, you can just do sprayed strokes and make sure the edges aren't like too intense. Okay, if you want that style. Okay. I'll show you zoomed in version of these. This is the one you saw earlier, right? The other version. I like if I zoom in, you see how this is, I like how the context feels in contrast to the building. This is a zoomed in of the, what we just saw. It was zoomed in crop. This is zoomed in, again, zoomed in crop. Again, this is important. Like you don't want the tree right down the middle, right, in your composition. This guy's a little too distracting. If I go back, this person needs to go. This person's like right in the, like off to the side. Again, I'm not a big fan of the Entourage of Twinmotion, or honestly any of the rendering programs. The Entourage isn't the greatest. This is zoomed in of that super textured one. Okay, this is the ones that you saw currently in the video, right? So this is like more cool. Again, too much ground. This is the one where I did the, I think it's called difference for that, the color. I did the difference, the color overlay, where it has like the difference. So that's why it kind of pops compared to the color of this. Oh, okay. I'm kind of going out of place, but this is straight out of Twinmotion. This is, I didn't do anything in Photoshop. This is straight out of Twinmotion. And it looks, I think in my opinion, looks fantastic. This obviously doesn't follow that same moody rendering. Okay, I just wanted to show you one rendering that's like just not touched at all, just like straight out of Twinmotion. This is the one up close. Okay, so I just want to show the capabilities, and I want to point out a couple things, right? Number one, again, the importance of like contrast of the landscape and hardscape versus landscape. So important, right? In your rendering styles. Secondly, again, like respecting tolerances of materials and different types of materials. Like I said, when we were modeling, I wanted a contrast of like smooth versus light flush, rough, heavy mass versus light mass, right? And even the small accents here, right? The small differences of material and frames. And I was saying maybe this is like glazed glass versus, like frame glass pushed in. I would have added a space between the wood and the concrete here, just to reinforce that separation of materials just a little bit more. I think it would have been helpful. All I had to do is like do the move face command, move it down like an inch, get just that little like dark gap. Like this is nice. See the little gap right there? That's nice, right? I did not touch this at all in Photoshop. This is just straight out of Twinmotion, and I put it in InDesign, and that's it. If I was gonna touch it up in Photoshop, I would, brighten this up just a little bit, right, with the curves to bump up the shadows a little bit because this is just a little too dark, and the sky is just a little bit boring. But yeah, this is a zoomed in version, you see? Ignore the text. Text is just placeholder. But you see the zoomed in version. This tree is out of control. Yeah, this is not the greatest tree. This tree's out of control. This is weird. The sky's boring. I would have done something with the sky. See, this is where like the textured effect kind of helps out because then like these buildings look really flat. The texturing helps. But this is, I think, a beautiful close up of like material composition study. I know schematic level, studio level, competition level. I think this is really great. Like this hammered metal facade, whether it's copper or anything. And again, division lines helpful. These lines are helpful. Okay, going back to this. This is a more warm version. Things are more warm. And I'll show you zoomed in of these, and you can see the difference, right? This is more zoomed in now. You see? More zoomed in, more zoomed in. And that's it. I think the funny thing and kind of maybe shameful thing is like I feel kind of ashamed of taking such beautiful artwork from like the American Romanticist period and just shoving it in the back of a rendering. It's a little silly, but honestly, these skies are just amazing from that period. Let me just go back here. I just think these just really help when to get that effect. I think it's just beautiful, especially when it's like more zoomed out like that. I think those are just beautiful. But yeah, it is a little silly because these are like, these are amazing painters, and I'm just putting it in the back of a random rendering is a little silly. But again, let me just reinforce this. I always have to reinforce this. This is really meant towards people who are, just starting out with rendering, more for conceptual level rendering, capturing the mood, capturing the narrative, great for storytelling, great for maybe like telling the story of the context, not trying to be hyper realistic in rendering styles, great for competitions, maybe schematic design, but that's really about it. Once you talk to clients and you need to start aiming for like accuracy of like scale of material and scale of space and things like that when you're talking to clients about managing their expectations. I mean, I'm not saying this is not, but like just be aware of that, as you're progressing through your academia level and also just professional level as well. I mean, back then they didn't have hyper realistic renderings. They drew things. They showed real materials. So the other point I want to make is like, once you reach a level of expressing your design intent in a very clear, captivating way, don't obsess over your renderings too much. You have other things to work on, right? Like you have drawings to work on, diagrams to work on, practicing your presentations and doing layouts and making your model and going to sleep and doing all these other things. So I think the problem maybe in architecture discourse is like this obsession of just like obsessions with your portfolio, obsessions with your renderings, obsessions with like obviously you want to have a quality standard, right, of achieving things, but don't obsess too much once you reach like a level that's, good and really captivating your design intent and your narrative. Like things can always be better. As designers, we're plagued by critiquing ourselves and making things better. But once you reach a certain level where it's like, okay, how much time do I really want to put into this when I have other things to do? Like once you reach a level like, okay, this really conveys the design intent in a clear, captivating way, like, okay, you can take a step back a bit. So yeah, really hope you find this helpful. Again, all this is absolutely for free. So make sure to share this with people if you find this helpful, if you like this style. And I'll just keep uploading more content when I have time. Again, really spread the channel if you can. It really helps the channel grow. All right. Thank you.